Every parent knows that feeling when you must choose between work and your own child. For most of us, the answer is clear, but not everyone has the courage to follow their heart. Martin Novotny was a single father of a 5-year-old boy. On Christmas Eve, he received a telegram from the hospital. His son had a high fever. Martin immediately left work and rushed home. For this decision, he was fired. No paycheck. No Christmas. Just an empty refrigerator and a small boy in bed. Then the company's chief executive officer stepped in. He wanted to know why a good employee got fired on Christmas. What he discovered changed everything. Before we continue, write in the comments where you are watching from. If this opening touched you, give it a like and subscribe. Tomorrow, another story awaits you that will show you humanity still exists. Every parent knows that feeling when you must choose between work and your own child. For most of us, the answer is clear, but not everyone has the courage to follow their heart. Martin Novotny was a single father of a 5-year-old boy. On Christmas Eve, he received a telegram from the hospital. His son had a high fever. Martin immediately left work and rushed home. For this decision, he was fired. No paycheck, no Christmas, just an empty refrigerator and a small boy in bed. Then the company's chief executive officer stepped in. He wanted to know why a good employee got fired on Christmas. What he discovered changed everything. Before we continue, write in the comments where you are watching from. If this opening touched you, give it a like and subscribe. Tomorrow, another story awaits you that will show you humanity still exists. The snow fell heavy on the streets of Brno that December morning. Martin Novotny stood at the bus stop with his worn leather briefcase, the same one his father had given him 20 years ago. The leather was cracked now, faded from countless journeys between home and work, but Martin kept it because it reminded him of better times. Times when his wife was still alive. Times when Christmas meant laughter instead of worry. He pulled his coat tighter against the cold wind. The bus was late again. Martin checked his watch, a simple silver piece with a scratched face. 6:45 in the morning. He had 15 minutes to get to the warehouse before his shift started. Being late meant a warning. 3 warnings meant termination. Martin already had 2. The warehouse where Martin worked sat on the eastern edge of the city, a massive grey building that looked like it had been there since the war. Kovac Industrial Supply, the faded letters read on the front gate. Martin had worked there for 8 years, ever since his wife Elena passed away from cancer. Before that, he had been a teacher at the local elementary school. He loved teaching. He loved seeing children's faces light up when they finally understood a difficult concept. But teaching did not pay enough to cover the medical bills that piled up during Elena's illness. So Martin took the warehouse job. It paid better. The work was hard, but Martin never complained. He loaded boxes, organized inventory, drove the forklift, and did whatever his supervisor asked. He needed this job. His son Thomas needed food, clothes, a warm home. Everything else could wait. The bus finally arrived 20 minutes late. Martin climbed aboard and found a seat near the back. The bus smelled of wet wool and diesel fuel. An elderly woman sat across from him, her hands wrapped around a small package. She smiled at Martin, and he smiled back. He thought of his own mother, who had passed away 3 years ago. She never got to see Thomas grow past his 2nd birthday. Elena's parents lived in another city and rarely visited. Martin's father had disappeared when Martin was young, so it was just Martin and Thomas now. 2 people against the world. Martin often wondered if he was doing enough. Was he a good father? Did Thomas have everything he needed? These questions kept Martin awake at night, staring at the ceiling of their small apartment, listening to his son breathe in the next room. Martin arrived at the warehouse at 7:10. He was late. His supervisor, a thick-necked man named Dvorak, stood near the entrance with his arms crossed. Dvorak was younger than Martin by at least 10 years, but he carried himself like someone who enjoyed having power over others. He wore a permanent scowl and spoke in short, clipped sentences. Dvorak had been promoted to supervisor 6 months ago, and since then, the warehouse had become a different place. The older workers, the ones who had been there for decades, started looking for other jobs. 2 had already quit. Martin could not afford to quit. He had nowhere else to go. Dvorak looked at his watch as Martin approached. "Late again, Novotny. That is your 3rd strike." Martin felt his stomach drop. "Please, I can explain. The bus was delayed because of the snow." Dvorak shook his head. "I do not care about the bus. I care about you being here on time." "You know the rules." Martin swallowed hard. "I understand, but please, it is almost Christmas. I have a son. I need this job." Dvorak's expression did not change. "Everyone has problems, Novotny. That does not mean you get special treatment. You are on thin ice. One more mistake and you are finished. Now get to work." Martin nodded and walked quickly toward the locker room. His hands were shaking. He could not lose this job. Not now. Not before Christmas. The warehouse was cold inside, almost as cold as outside. The heating system barely worked, and the management never bothered to fix it. Martin put on his work gloves and safety vest. He reported to the loading dock where a truck had just arrived with a shipment of metal parts. Another worker, an older man named Joseph, was already there. Joseph had worked at the warehouse for 30 years. He had a kind face and always had a word of encouragement for Martin. "Good morning, Martin. How is little Thomas?" Martin forced a smile. "He is good. Excited about Christmas." Joseph nodded. "Children always are. It is a magical time for them." He paused. "Are you all right? You look worried." Martin shrugged. "Just the usual, trying to make everything work." Joseph placed a hand on Martin's shoulder. "It will work out. It always does. You are a good man, Martin. A good father. Do not forget of that." They worked in Holdens for the next few hours, unloading boxes and stacking them on pallets. The work was repetitive, but physical. Martin's back ached by mid-morning, but he pushed through. He thought about Thomas. He thought about what he would get him for Christmas. Money was tight. Very tight. After paying rent and utilities, Martin had maybe 200 crowns left. That was enough for some food, and maybe one small toy. Thomas had asked for a toy train, the kind that ran on little wooden tracks. Martin had seen one in the shop window downtown. It cost 300 crowns. Too much. But maybe, just maybe, if Martin could pick up an extra shift this week, he could afford it. He would ask Dvorak at lunch. Lunch break came at noon. The workers gathered in a small break room with a few tables and a microwave that barely worked. Martin sat with Joseph and 2 other men, Pavel and Lukas. They unpacked their lunches from home. Martin had a sandwich made from yesterday's bread and a slice of cheese. He also had an apple that was starting to bruise. It was not much, but it would hold him until dinner. The other men talked about their plans for Christmas. Pavel was going to visit his daughter in Praha. Lucas was hosting his entire family for a big dinner. Josef was spending a quiet evening with his wife. They all asked Martin what he was doing. "Just me and Thomas," Martin said quietly. "We will have a small dinner at home, maybe watch some old movies." The men nodded. They knew Martin's situation. They knew he was alone. They did not pity him, but they understood. After lunch, Martin found Dvorak in the supervisor's office. The office was a small, glass-enclosed space overlooking the warehouse floor. Dvorak sat at a metal desk covered with papers and a computer that looked 20 years old. Martin knocked on the door. Dvorak looked up. "What do you want, Novotny?" Martin stepped inside. "I was wondering if there are any extra shifts available this week. I could use the hours." Dvorak leaned back in his chair. "Extra shifts? Before Christmas?" "Everyone wants extra shifts, Novotny. There are none available." Martin felt his hope deflate. "Are you sure? Even just 1 or 2 days?" Dvorak shook his head. "I am sure. Now get back to work. We have another shipment coming in at 2. Martin nodded and left the office. He felt defeated. How was he going to make Christmas special for Thomas with so little money? The afternoon dragged on. Another truck arrived, this one carrying boxes of industrial tools. Martin and the crew unloaded it in the freezing cold. Snow continued to fall outside. By 4 in the afternoon, the light was already fading. Winter days in Brno were short and grey. Martin's fingers were numb despite his gloves. His back throbbed. But he kept working. He had to. At 5, Dvorak announced that everyone could leave. The day shift was over. Martin changed out of his work clothes and grabbed his briefcase. He said goodbye to Joseph and the others, then walked to the bus stop. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. Martin stared out the window at the city passing by. Lights were starting to come on in windows. Families were gathering for dinner. Martin felt a deep loneliness settle over him. He missed Elena. He missed having someone to talk to at the end of a long day. He missed having a partner in raising Thomas. The bus dropped Martin off 3 blocks from his apartment. He walked through the snow, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. The apartment building was old, built sometime in the 1960s. The paint was peeling, and the hallway always smelled like cabbage and old carpet. Martin climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. His apartment was at the end of the hall. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. Thomas was sitting on the floor playing with a few toy cars. A neighbor, an elderly woman named Pani Kovarova, sat on the couch watching him. She looked after Thomas during the day while Martin worked. Martin paid her what he could, usually 100 crowns a week. It was not much, but she never complained. She loved Thomas like he was her own grandson. Pani Kovarova stood when Martin entered. "Good evening, Martin. Thomas has been a good boy today. We made some drawings and read a story." Martin smiled. "Thank you, Pani Kovarova. I do not know what I would do without you." She waved her hand. "It is nothing. Thomas is a joy." She gathered her things and headed for the door. "I will see you tomorrow. Have a good evening." Martin thanked her again and closed the door. He turned to Thomas. The boy looked up with bright eyes. "Papa, you are home." Thomas ran to Martin and hugged his legs. Martin lifted him up and held him close. "How was your day, little one?" "It was good. Pani Kovarova and I made a drawing of a train. Do you want to see it?" "Of course I do." Thomas showed Martin a crayon drawing of a red train with blue wheels. It was crooked and messy, but Martin thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "This is wonderful, Thomas. You are a great artist." Thomas beamed with pride. "Papa, will Santa bring me a train for Christmas?" Martin felt his chest tighten. He did not want to lie to his son, but he also did not want to disappoint him. "I hope so, Thomas. We will have to see what Santa can do." Thomas nodded. "I wrote him a letter. I told him I have been very good this year." Martin smiled. "I am sure you have been. Now let us make some dinner. Are you hungry?" Thomas nodded enthusiastically. "Yes. Can we have soup?" Martin checked the cupboard. They had a can of vegetable soup and some bread. It would turn out. "Have to do. Yes, we can have soup." While the soup heated on the stove, Martin sat at the small kitchen table and watched Thomas play. The apartment was tiny, just 2 rooms and a bathroom. The walls were thin, and Martin could hear the neighbors arguing upstairs. The furniture was old and worn, donated by a church when Martin first moved in. But it was home. It was warm and safe, and that was all that mattered. Martin thought about the toy train. 300 crowns. It might as well have been 3,000. He did not have it. He would not have it by Christmas. He would have to find something else. Maybe he could make something. Martin was not particularly handy, but he could try. Or maybe he could find a used toy at the second-hand shop. Something, anything, to make Thomas smile on Christmas morning. They ate dinner together at the table. Thomas talked about his day, about the drawings he made, about the story Pani Kovarova read to him. Martin listened and asked questions. He loved these moments with his son. They were the only times during the day when Martin felt truly at peace. After dinner, Martin washed the dishes while Thomas played quietly in the corner. Then it was time for bed. Martin helped Thomas brush his teeth and put on his pajamas. They climbed into the small bed they shared, and Martin read a story from an old book. It was a story about a brave little mouse who went on an adventure. Thomas loved it. He asked Martin to read it again, but Martin said it was too late. Maybe tomorrow. Thomas yawned and snuggled against Martin's chest. "I love you, Papa." Martin kissed the top of his head. "I love you too, little one. More than anything in the world." After Thomas fell asleep, Martin carefully slipped out of bed. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of weak tea and looked at the bills stacked in the corner. Rent was due in 2 weeks. The electric bill was overdue. The grocery money was almost gone. Martin rubbed his eyes. He was so tired, tired of worrying, tired of struggling, tired of feeling like he was failing his son. But he could not give up. He would not give up. Thomas deserved better. Thomas deserved a father who fought for him, who worked hard, who made sure he had everything he needed. Martin would do whatever it took. He would survive this. They would survive this. Together. The next few days passed in the same routine. Wake up early, take the bus to the warehouse, work all day, come home exhausted, spend the evening with Thomas, fall asleep worrying about money. Martin asked around at work if anyone knew of extra jobs, side work he could do in the evenings or on weekends. No one had anything. The economy was bad. Jobs were scarce. People were holding on to what they had. Martin even considered selling some of his belongings, but he owned almost nothing of value. The television was old and broken. The furniture was worthless. His wedding ring was the only thing that might bring in some money, But Martin could not bring himself to sell it. It was all he had left of Eleanor. On December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, Martin woke up with a sense of dread. He did not know why. He got dressed and made breakfast for Thomas. Oatmeal with a little bit of honey. Thomas ate happily, talking about Christmas and Santa and the train he hoped to receive. Martin smiled and nodded, but inside he felt hollow. He kissed Thomas goodbye and left for work. The bus was on time for once. Martin arrived at the warehouse a few minutes early. Dvorak was already there, as always, watching everyone with his cold eyes. Martin clocked in and went to the loading dock. The morning passed slowly. Another shipment arrived. More boxes to unload. More heavy lifting. Martin's back was killing him, but he did not complain. At around 10 in the morning, Dvorak called Martin into the office. Martin's heart sank. This could not be good. He walked to the office and knocked. "Come in," Dvorak barked. Martin stepped inside. Dvorak was sitting at his desk with his arms crossed. "Sit down, Novotny." Martin sat. His palms were sweating. Dvorak looked at him for a long moment. "I have been reviewing your performance, Novotny. You have been late multiple times. Your productivity has been below average, and frankly, you seem distracted." Martin opened his mouth to speak, but Dvorak held up a hand. "I do not want excuses. I want results, and you are not delivering." Martin felt panic rising in his chest. "Please, give me another chance. I will do better. I promise." Dvorak shook his head. "I have heard that before. I am putting you on notice. One more mistake, one more late arrival, one more anything, and you are done. Do you understand?" Martin nodded. "Yes, I understand." "Good. Now get back to work." Martin left the office feeling sick. He was on the edge of losing everything. One mistake. That was all it would take. He returned to the loading dock and threw himself into his work. He moved faster, lifted heavier boxes, did everything he could to prove he was valuable. But deep down, he knew it would not matter. Dvorak had already made up his mind. Martin was on borrowed time. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Martin barely spoke to anyone. He just worked. At 5, he clocked out and headed for the bus. The snow was falling again. Christmas Eve was tomorrow. Martin had no gifts for Thomas. No special dinner planned. Nothing. He felt like the worst father in the world. When Martin got home that evening, Thomas was waiting for him with excitement in his eyes. "Papa, tomorrow is Christmas Eve. Will we decorate? Will we make cookies?" Martin forced a smile. "We will do something special, I promise. But right now, let us have dinner." They ate quietly. Martin had managed to buy a small chicken and some potatoes. It was more than usual, a tiny splurge for the holiday. Thomas seemed happy. After dinner, Martin helped him write a letter to Santa. Even though Martin knew there would be no train under the tree, they taped the letter to the window, and Thomas went to bed with dreams of Christmas morning. Martin sat alone in the dark apartment, staring at the empty space where a Christmas tree should be. He had failed. He had nothing to give his son. Nothing. Christmas Eve morning arrived cold and grey. Martin woke up at 5, even though he did not have to be at work until 8. He could not sleep. His mind raced with worry about money, about Thomas, about the future. He got out of bed carefully, trying not to wake his son. The apartment was freezing. The landlord had turned down the heat again to save money. Martin made a pot of weak coffee and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. Outside, the city was still asleep. A few street lights glowed orange through the falling snow. Martin thought about Elena. She would have known what to do. She always knew how to make things better, how to find joy, even in difficult times. Martin missed her wisdom. He missed her warmth. He missed everything about her. At 6:30, Thomas woke up. He came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Good morning, Papa." Martin smiled. "Good morning, little one. Did you sleep well?" Thomas nodded. "I dreamed about the train. The red one with the whistle." Martin felt his heart break a little. "That sounds like a wonderful dream. Are you hungry?" Thomas climbed into his chair. "Yes, please." Martin made oatmeal again. They were almost out of food. He would need to go to the market after work today, but he only had 50 crowns left in his wallet. 50 crowns for Christmas dinner and whatever else they needed. It was not enough. It was never enough. But Martin would make it work. He always did. After breakfast, Martin got dressed for work. He put on his old coat and wrapped a scarf around his neck. Thomas watched him from the doorway. "Do you have to go to work today, Papa? It is Christmas Eve." Martin knelt down and hugged his son. "I know, little one, but I have to work so we can have food and a warm place to live. I will be home early, I promise. Then we will spend the evening together. Maybe we can walk around and look at the Christmas lights in the city. Would you like that?" Thomas nodded, but Martin could see the disappointment in his eyes. Pani Kovarova arrived a few minutes later. She was bundled up in a thick coat and wool hat. "The building is so cold today," she said. "I brought an extra blanket for Thomas." Martin thanked her. He kissed Thomas goodbye and headed out into the snow. The bus was packed with people doing last-minute shopping. Everyone carried bags and packages. Martin felt out of place with his empty hands and worn briefcase. He stared out the window and tried not to think about all the gifts other children would receive tomorrow morning. The warehouse was quiet when Martin arrived. Only a skeleton crew was working on Christmas Eve. Most of the staff had been given the day off. Martin, Joseph, and 3 other men were the only ones on the loading dock. Dvorak was there too, of course. He never took time off. He stood near the entrance with his clipboard, checking off names as people arrived. Martin clocked in at exactly 8. Dvorak looked at him, but said nothing. The morning shift was supposed to end at noon. Martin planned to leave right at noon, so he could get to the market before it closed. He needed to buy something for dinner. Maybe some bread, some vegetables for soup, a small piece of meat if he could afford it. The crew worked steadily through the morning. There was only one small shipment to unload, a truck full of cleaning supplies. It took them about 2 hours. After that, they organized the warehouse, sweeping floors and stacking empty pallets. Joseph worked beside Martin in comfortable silence. At 11:30, Dvorak called everyone together. "Listen up," he said. "We are closing at noon today for the holiday. Make sure everything is locked down before you leave. I want all equipment turned off and all doors secured. Understood?" The men nodded. Martin was wiping down the forklift when it happened. At 11:45, a delivery man walked into the warehouse carrying a yellow envelope. He looked around until he spotted Martin. "Are you Martin Novotny?" Martin looked up. "Yes, that is me." The delivery man handed him the envelope. "Telegram for you. Sign here." Martin's hand shook as he signed the paper. A telegram. Nobody sent telegrams anymore, unless it was an emergency. He tore open the envelope and read the message inside. His blood ran cold. The telegram was from Municipal Hospital. It was about Thomas. The message was short and direct. Your son Thomas Novotny was brought to emergency room at 10:30 this morning with high fever and difficulty breathing. Please come immediately. Room 214, pediatric ward. Martin dropped the envelope. His vision blurred. He could not breathe. Thomas, his son, in the hospital, high fever, difficulty breathing. What did that mean? Was he dying? Was he going to lose Thomas the same way he lost Elena? No. No, that could not happen. Martin grabbed his coat and briefcase. He ran toward the exit. Joseph called after him. "Martin! What is wrong?" Martin did not stop. He shouted over his shoulder. "My son is in the hospital. I have to go." He burst through the door into the parking lot. Behind him, he heard Dvorak yelling, "Novotny! Where do you think you are going? We do not close for another 15 minutes. Get back here." Martin did not turn around. He kept running. He ran through the snow toward the main road. The hospital was on the other side of the city. It would take at least 40 minutes by bus, maybe longer with holiday traffic. Martin reached the bus stop and checked the schedule. The next bus was not for another 20 minutes. He could not wait that long. He started running down the street looking for a taxi. His lungs burned. His legs ached. But he did not care. He had to get to Thomas. He had to make sure his son was all right. After running for several blocks, Martin finally saw a taxi. He waved his arms frantically. The taxi pulled over. Martin yanked open the door and climbed in. "Municipal Hospital," he gasped. "As fast as you can. Please. It is an emergency." The driver nodded and pulled into traffic. Martin sat in the back seat, trying to catch his breath. His heart pounded in his chest. He thought about the telegram. High fever. Difficulty breathing. Those were serious symptoms. What if Thomas had pneumonia? What if it was something worse? Martin felt tears burning in his eyes. He wiped them away. He had to stay strong. He had to be calm for Thomas. The taxi crawled through the holiday traffic. Every red light felt like an eternity. Martin wanted to scream. He wanted to tell the driver to go faster, to run the lights, to do whatever it took to get him to the hospital. But he stayed silent. He clenched his fists and stared out the window. After 30 agonizing minutes, the taxi pulled up to the hospital entrance. Martin threw 40 crowns at the driver and jumped out. He ran through the front doors and looked around wildly. A nurse at the reception desk looked up. "Can I help you?" Martin rushed to the desk. "My son, Thomas Novotny. He was brought in this morning. Pediatric ward, room 214. The nurse checked her computer. "Yes, second floor. Take the elevator on your left." Martin thanked her and ran to the elevator. He pressed the button repeatedly, but the elevator took forever to arrive. When the doors finally opened, Martin jumped inside and pressed the button for the second floor. The elevator rose slowly. Martin felt like he was going to lose his mind. When the doors opened, he ran down the hallway, looking at room numbers. 206, 208, 210, 212. Finally, 214. Martin pushed open the door and stopped. Thomas was lying in a hospital bed, looking small and pale. His skin was flushed with fever. An oxygen tube ran under his nose. Pani Kovarova sat in a chair beside the bed, her face lined with worry. She stood when Martin entered. "Oh, Martin, I am so sorry. He got sick so suddenly. One moment he was fine, and the next he was burning up with fever. He could not breathe properly. I called for an ambulance right away. Martin went to the bed and took Thomas's small hand. His son's eyes fluttered open. "Papa," Thomas whispered. His voice was weak. "I am here, little one," Martin said, fighting back tears. "I am right here." A doctor entered the room, a young woman with kind eyes. "Mr. Novotny." Martin turned. "Yes. How is he? What is wrong?" The doctor looked at her chart. "Your son has a severe case of pneumonia. His fever is very high, 39.5 degrees. We have started him on antibiotics and oxygen therapy. He will need to stay here for observation, probably for the next 2 or 3 days. Martin felt relief wash over him. "So he will be okay?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, with proper treatment he should make a full recovery. But it was good that Mrs. Kovarova brought him in when she did. Pneumonia can become very serious very quickly, especially in young children." Martin squeezed Thomas's hand. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much." The doctor smiled. "He is in good hands. We will take care of him. You can stay with him if you like. There is a chair that folds out into a small bed." Martin nodded. "Yes, I will stay. I am not leaving him." Pani Kovarova gathered her things. "I should go home now, but I will come back tomorrow to check on him." Martin hugged her. "Thank you for calling the ambulance. Thank you for taking care of him." She patted his cheek. "He is like my own grandson. Of course I took care of him. You are a good father, Martin. Do not ever doubt that." She left, and Martin sat in the chair beside Thomas's bed. His son had fallen asleep again. Martin watched him breathe, watched his small chest rise and fall. He thought about how close he had come to losing him. If Pani Kovarova had waited even an hour longer, things might have been very different. Martin said a silent prayer of thanks. Thomas was going to be okay. That was all that mattered. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking Thomas's temperature, adjusting his IV, recording notes on their charts. Martin never left the chair. He held his son's hand and whispered to him, "I love you, little one. You are going to be just fine. Papa is here. I am not going anywhere." Outside the window, darkness fell. Christmas Eve evening arrived. Somewhere in the city, families were gathering for dinner. Children were opening presents. But Martin did not care about any of that. He had everything he needed right here in this hospital room. His son was alive. His son was safe. Nothing else mattered. At around 8 in the evening, Martin's phone rang. He did not recognize the number. He answered quietly, so he would not wake Thomas. "Hello?" A gruff voice came through the line. "Novotny, this is Dvorak." Martin's stomach dropped. "Yes?" Dvorak's voice was cold and hard. "You left your shift early today without permission. You abandoned your post. That is grounds for immediate termination." Martin closed his eyes. "Please, my son is in the hospital. He has pneumonia. I got a telegram. I had to come." Dvorak did not hesitate. "I do not care about your excuses. You broke the rules. You are fired, effective immediately. Do not bother coming back. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you." Martin felt numb. "But it is Christmas Eve. I have a sick child. I need this job. Please." Dvorak's voice was like ice. You should have thought about that before you left. Goodbye, Novotny. The line went dead. Martin sat in the dark hospital room, staring at his phone. He had been fired on Christmas Eve. He had no job, no income, no way to pay rent or buy food or take care of Thomas. Everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed, it was all gone. Martin put his head in his hands. He wanted to cry, but the tears would not come. He just felt empty, hollow, defeated. Thomas stirred in his sleep and squeezed Martin's hand. Martin looked at his son's face, peaceful now, the fever finally starting to break. And in that moment, Martin made a decision. He did not care about the job. He did not care about Dvorak or the warehouse or any of it. His son was alive. That was what mattered. Everything else could be figured out later. Martin leaned forward and kissed Thomas's forehead. "We will be okay," he whispered. "I promise you, we will be okay." Martin spent Christmas Eve night in the hospital chair beside Thomas's bed. The chair was hard and uncomfortable, but Martin did not notice. He dozed on and off, waking every time a nurse came to check on Thomas. Each time he woke, the first thing he did was look at his son to make sure he was still breathing. The fever had come down slightly, but Thomas was still very sick. His small body looked so fragile against the white hospital sheets. Martin held his hand through the night, afraid to let go, as if his touch alone could keep his son safe. Morning came slowly. Grey winter light filtered through the hospital window. It was Christmas Day. Martin looked around the stark hospital room and thought about all the Christmas mornings he had imagined. He had wanted to give Thomas a real Christmas, with presents and a tree and a special breakfast. Instead, they were here. But Thomas was alive, and that was the only gift that truly mattered. At around 7 in the morning, a different doctor came in to examine Thomas. She was older, with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. She checked Thomas's vitals and listened to his lungs with a stethoscope. "The antibiotics are working," she said. "His fever is down to 38.2. That is good progress." Martin felt relief flood through him. "When can he go home?" The doctor made some notes on her chart. "We want to keep him at least another day, maybe 2. We need to make sure the infection is completely under control." Martin nodded. "Whatever you think is best." After the doctor left, Thomas woke up. His eyes were clearer than they had been the night before. "Papa," he said softly. "Where are we?" Martin smiled and stroked his son's hair. "We are in the hospital, little one. You got very sick yesterday. But the doctors are taking care of you. You are going to be fine." Thomas looked around the room with confusion. "But it is Christmas. Did Santa come?" Martin felt his throat tighten. He had completely forgotten about Santa, about the toy train, about all the promises he had made. "Santa knows you are in the hospital," Martin said carefully. "He will understand. We can celebrate Christmas when you feel better." Thomas's lower lip trembled. "But I wanted to see the train. I was so good this year." Martin pulled his chair closer and took both of Thomas's hands. "I know you were good. You are always good. And we will have Christmas, I promise. It might not be today, but we will have it soon." Thomas nodded slowly, fighting back tears. "Okay, Papa." A nurse brought breakfast for Thomas. Plain porridge and some juice. Thomas ate a few spoonfuls, but said his throat hurt too much to eat more. Martin encouraged him to drink the juice. "You need to stay strong, little one. The doctor said the medicine is working. You just need to rest and let your body heal." Thomas drank half the juice and then lay back against the pillows. He looked exhausted. Martin sang to him softly, an old lullaby that Elena used to sing. Thomas's eyes closed, and soon he was asleep again. Martin sat back in the chair and finally allowed himself to think about what had happened. He had been fired on Christmas Eve. He had no job and no money. The final paycheck Dvorak mentioned would not be enough to cover even 1 month of rent. Martin had maybe 2 weeks before they would be evicted from their apartment. He needed to think. He needed a plan. But his mind felt foggy from lack of sleep and stress. What could he do? He could look for another job, but who would hire him right after Christmas? And what about Thomas? He would need time to recover. Martin could not leave him alone to go to job interviews. Pani Kovarova could help, but she was old and could not take on more responsibilities. Martin rubbed his eyes. He felt trapped, hopeless. For the first time in his life, he did not know what to do. He had always found a way to survive, to push through difficult times. But this felt different. This felt impossible. Around noon, Pani Kovarova arrived at the hospital carrying a small bag. She had brought some clothes for Martin and a few toys for Thomas. She also brought sandwiches for lunch. "You need to eat," she told Martin firmly. "You cannot take care of your son if you do not take care of yourself." Martin thanked her and ate one of the sandwiches, though he tasted nothing. Pani Kovarova sat with Thomas while Martin went to the bathroom to wash his face and change his shirt. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. His eyes were bloodshot and hollow. His face was pale and drawn. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years overnight. When Martin returned to the room, Pani Kovarova pulled him aside. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "About your job." Martin looked at her in surprise. "How did you know?" She patted his arm. "Mrs. Svoboda Svoboda from the 4th floor. Her husband works at the warehouse. He told her that Dvorak fired you yesterday. The whole building knows by now." Martin felt shame wash over him. Everyone knew he had been fired. Everyone knew he was a failure. Pani Kovarova seemed to read his thoughts. "You are not a failure, Martin. You are a good man who made the right choice. Your son needed you, and you went to him. That is what a good father does." Martin shook his head. "But now I have no job. No way to provide for him. What kind of father does that make me?" Pani Kovarova's expression softened. "It makes you human. Life is hard, Martin. Things go wrong. But you are strong. You will find another job. You will take care of Thomas. You always do." Martin wanted to believe her, but the weight of his situation pressed down on him like a physical force. "I do not know if I can do this anymore," he admitted. "I am so tired. Tired of struggling. Tired of worrying. Tired of feeling like I am drowning." Pani Kovarova took his hands in hers. "Listen to me. You are not drowning. You are swimming. And yes, the water is rough right now. But you keep swimming. For Thomas. For yourself. For Elena's memory. You do not give up. Do you hear me?" Martin nodded, though he did not feel convinced. "Thank you, Pani Kovarova. I do not know what I would do without you." She stayed for another hour before heading home. After she left, Martin sat beside Thomas and watched him sleep. The hospital was quiet. Most of the staff had the day off for Christmas. Only a few nurses moved through the halls. Martin thought about Elena. What would she say if she could see him now? Would she be disappointed? Would she think he had failed? Martin remembered the last conversation he had with her before she died. She had been in the hospital, much like Thomas was now. She had taken Martin's hand and made him promise to take care of their son. "Promise me you will give him a good life," she had said. "Promise me you will love him enough for both of us." Martin had promised. He had sworn he would do whatever it took. But now, sitting in this cold hospital room on Christmas Day, Martin wondered if his promise had been worth anything at all. The afternoon passed slowly. Thomas woke up a few times, drank some water, and went back to sleep. His fever continued to drop. By evening, it was down to 37.8. The doctor came by and said she was pleased with his progress. "If he continues to improve like this, you might be able to take him home tomorrow afternoon." Martin felt a small flicker of hope. That was good news. At least they could go home. At least they could be in their own space, even if that space was cold and empty and offered no solutions to their problems. Around 6 in the evening, a nurse brought dinner trays for both Martin and Thomas. Chicken soup and bread. Thomas managed to eat a little more this time. Martin forced himself to eat as well, though his stomach churned with anxiety. After dinner, Martin folded out the chair into a makeshift bed. The nurse brought him a thin blanket and a pillow. It was not much, but it was better than sitting upright all night. Martin lay down beside Thomas's bed and stared at the ceiling. The hospital was quiet now. Outside, the city was dark. Christmas was over. The holiday had come and gone, and Martin had nothing to show for it except medical bills he could not pay, and a future that looked bleaker than ever. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind would not stop racing. He thought about rent, about food, about finding a new job, about keeping Thomas safe and healthy. The problems stacked up in his mind like a mountain he could never climb. Sometime after midnight, Martin finally fell into a restless sleep. He dreamed of Elena. She was standing in their old apartment, the one they had lived in before she got sick. She was smiling, her dark hair falling over her shoulders. "Martin," she said, "you are doing your best. That is all anyone can ask." Martin reached for her, but she faded away like smoke. He woke up with tears on his cheeks. The hospital room was dark and silent. Thomas was sleeping peacefully beside him. Martin wiped his eyes and took a deep breath. Elena was right. He was doing his best. It might not be enough, but it was all he had. He would keep going. He had to. For Thomas. Always for Thomas. The next morning brought better news. Thomas's fever was almost completely gone. He sat up in bed and asked for breakfast. The nurse brought him scrambled eggs and toast, and he ate most of it. Martin felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His son was getting better. The infection was retreating. By noon, the doctor came in with discharge papers. "Your son can go home today," she said. "Continue giving him the antibiotics for the next 7 days. Make sure he gets plenty of rest and fluids. If the fever comes back, or if he has trouble breathing again, bring him straight back here." Martin nodded and signed the papers. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for everything." She smiled. "He is a strong boy. He will be just fine."
Martin helped Thomas get dressed in the clothes Pani Kovarova had brought. The boy moved slowly, still weak from being sick. Martin carried him down to the hospital entrance, and they waited for the bus. The cold air made Thomas cough, and Martin wrapped his scarf around his son's neck. The bus ride home took longer than usual because of the holiday schedule. When they finally reached their apartment building, Martin carried Thomas up the 3 flights of stairs. Pani Kovarova was waiting at their door with a pot of soup. "I made this for you both," she said. "Chicken and vegetables. It will help Thomas get his strength back." Martin thanked her and brought the soup inside. He settled Thomas on the couch with blankets and pillows. The apartment was cold. The landlord had turned the heat down even more over the holiday. Martin heated up the soup and served it in 2 bowls. They ate together on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Thomas looked around the empty apartment. "Papa, where is the Christmas tree? Where are the presents?" Martin set down his spoon. He had been dreading this conversation. "Well, little one, we had to spend Christmas in the hospital, so we did not have time for a tree or presents. But that does not mean we cannot celebrate later. Maybe in a few days, when you feel better, we can do something special." Thomas looked disappointed, but nodded. "Okay, Papa. I understand." Martin hugged him close. "You are such a good boy. I am so proud of you." They finished their soup in silence. Outside, the winter afternoon was already growing dark. That evening, after Thomas fell asleep, Martin sat at the kitchen table and looked at his
bills. He had 40 crowns left to his name. 40 crowns. The rent was 8,000 crowns per month, due in 12 days. The electric bill was 300 crowns, already 2 weeks overdue. He still needed to buy food, medicine for Thomas, and somehow find money for bus fare to go job hunting. Martin did the math in his head. Even with his final paycheck from the warehouse, which would be maybe 4,000 crowns after deductions, he would still be short. Way short. He needed at least 5,000 more crowns just to survive the next month, and that was assuming he found a new job immediately. Martin pulled out a newspaper and turned to the classified ads. There were a few job listings, but most required skills he did not have or were too far away. One listing caught his eye. Warehouse worker needed. Immediate start. Good pay. Martin circled it with a pen. He would call first thing tomorrow morning. He circled 3 other jobs as well. A janitor position at a school, a delivery driver for a bakery, a maintenance worker for an apartment complex. None of them paid as well as his old job, but Martin could not afford to be picky. He needed work. Any work. He would take whatever he could get. The next morning, Martin woke up early and made breakfast for Thomas. The boy was still tired, but his appetite was returning. After breakfast, Martin called the number for the warehouse job. A man answered. "Hello, I'm calling about the warehouse position," Martin said. "Is it still available?" The man grunted. "Yeah, it is still open. You have experience?" "Yes, I worked at Kovac Industrial for 8 years." The man paused. "Kovac. Why did you leave?" Martin hesitated. He did not want to lie, but he also did not want to explain about being fired. "I left to take care of my sick son." The man seemed satisfied with that answer. "Can you start next week?" "Yes, absolutely." "Good. Come by tomorrow for an interview. 10 in the morning. Bring your identification and work history." Martin wrote down the address and thanked the man. After he hung up, he felt a small surge of hope. An interview. That was something. Martin spent the rest of the day taking care of Thomas and preparing for the interview. He ironed his one good shirt and polished his old shoes. He practiced what he would say. He knew he had to make a good impression. He could not afford to mess this up. That evening, Pani Kovarova came over to check on Thomas. She brought more soup and some bread. "How is the job search going?" she asked. Martin told her about the interview. "That is wonderful news," she said. "I will watch Thomas tomorrow while you go. Do not worry about anything. Just focus on getting that job." Martin thanked her. He did not know how he would ever repay her kindness. The next morning, Martin dressed carefully in his good shirt and clean pants. He looked at himself in the mirror. He still looked tired and worn, but at least he looked presentable. He kissed Thomas goodbye and took the bus across the city to the warehouse. It was in an industrial area near the railway station. The building was even bigger than Kovac. Martin walked inside and found the office. A secretary told him to wait. After 20 minutes, a large man with a thick moustache came out. "You must be Novotny. I am Mr. Beran. Come with me." Martin followed him into a small office. Mr. Beran sat behind a desk covered with papers. "So you worked at Kovac for 8 years?" "Yes, sir." "What did you do there?" "Mostly loading and unloading shipments, some inventory management, forklift operation." Mr. Beran nodded. "Can you work long hours? Overtime when needed?" "Yes, I can do whatever is required." Mr. Beran leaned back in his chair. "I called Kovac this morning to check your reference. Your supervisor, Mr. Dvorak, said you abandoned your post without permission. He said you were unreliable." Martin felt his heart sink. "Sir, I can explain. My son was in the hospital with pneumonia. I received an emergency telegram. I had to go to him." Mr. Beran held up his hand. "I do not need to hear excuses. If you cannot be relied on to finish your shift, then you are not the right fit for this job." Martin's voice shook. "Please, I am a good worker. I never missed a day in 8 years, except for that one time. My son was dying. What was I supposed to do?" Mr. Beran stood up. "I am sorry, but I cannot hire someone with that kind of record. Good luck finding something else." The interview was over. Martin walked out of the building in a daze. Dvorak had sabotaged him. Dvorak had destroyed his only chance at a new job. Martin felt rage building in his chest. How could someone be so cruel, so heartless? He walked to the bus stop and waited in the cold. When the bus came, he sat in the back and stared out the window. The city passed by in a grey blur. Martin felt defeated. He had tried. He had done everything right. And it still was not enough. The other jobs he had circled would probably call Kovac, too. They would all hear the same story from Dvorak. Martin was unreliable. Martin could not be trusted. It did not matter that his son had been sick. It did not matter that he was a good father. All that mattered was that he had broken the rules. When Martin got home, Pani Kovarova took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" Martin collapsed into a chair. "Dvorak gave me a bad reference. They would not hire me." She shook her head. "That man has no heart. But there will be other jobs, Martin. You cannot give up." Martin looked at her with empty eyes. "What is the point? Even if I find something else, they will all call Kovac. Dvorak will ruin every opportunity I have." "I am finished." Pani Kovarova sat beside him. You are not finished. You are tired and scared, but you are not finished. Something will come through. You have to believe that." Martin wanted to believe her. He truly did. But belief was hard when reality kept crushing him. That night, Martin could not sleep. He lay in hall, bed beside Thomas, and stared at the ceiling. His mind spun with worry. In 10 days, the rent would be due. He had no money, no job, no prospects. They would be evicted. They would be homeless, in winter, with a sick child. Martin thought about going to a church for help, but he had too much pride. He thought about asking neighbors for money, but everyone in the building was just as poor as he was. He thought about selling his wedding ring after all, but even that would only buy him another week or 2. He was trapped, completely and utterly trapped. Martin closed his eyes and tried to pray, but the words would not come. He had prayed so many times in his life. Prayed for Eleanor to survive. Prayed for Thomas to be healthy. Prayed for a better life. But prayer had never changed anything. He was alone in this. Alone and sinking. 3 days passed. Martin tried calling the other jobs he had circled in the newspaper. 2 of them said the positions had been filled. The third one, the janitor position at a school, agreed to an interview. Martin went on a cold Thursday morning. The school was old and smelled like chalk and floor wax. The principal was a stern woman with glasses who asked him many questions. "Why did you leave your previous job?" Martin told her the truth. "My son was in the hospital. I had to go to him." The principal frowned. "And your supervisor fired you for that?" "Yes." She made some notes on a paper. "I will need to call for a reference." Martin felt his hopes sink. Of course she would call Kovac. Of course Dvorak would tell her the same lies. The principal said she would let him know in a few days. Martin left the school knowing he would never hear from her again. When he got home, the landlord was waiting outside his apartment door. Mr. Petrick was a short, fat man, with small eyes and a permanent scowl. He owned the entire building and treated his tenants like they were burdens. "Novotny, we need to talk." Martin unlocked his door. "Can we talk inside? My son is sleeping." Mr. Petrick followed him into the apartment and looked around with disgust. "I heard you lost your job." Martin nodded. "Yes, but I'm looking for new work. I will have the rent on time." Mr. Petrick crossed his arms. "You better. Because if you are even 1 day late, I am starting eviction proceedings. I do not run a charity here." Martin felt anger rise in his chest, but pushed it down. "I understand." Mr. Petrick turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "And fix that dripping faucet in the bathroom. It is wasting water." Then he was gone. Martin stood in the middle of his apartment, feeling the walls close in. The faucet had been dripping for months. Martin had asked Mr. Petrick to fix it many times, but the landlord always said it was not his problem. Now suddenly it mattered. Martin went to the bathroom and tried to tighten the faucet with his hands, but it did not help. He would need tools he did not have and skills he did not possess. He gave up and returned to the kitchen. Thomas was awake now, sitting on the couch with his coloring books. "Papa, I am hungry." Martin checked the cupboard. They had half a loaf of bread, some butter, and 1 can of beans. That was all. He made Thomas a piece of bread with butter and opened the can of beans for himself. They ate in silence. That afternoon, Pani Kovarova came over with more food. She had made a pot of stew and brought a bag of potatoes. Martin tried to refuse. "You have already done so much for us. I cannot keep taking from you." She waved her hand. "Nonsense. What else am I going to do with all this food? My appetite is not what it used to be. Now sit down and eat." Martin and Thomas ate the stew gratefully. It was warm and filling, the first real meal they had eaten in days. After they finished, Pani Kovarova sat beside Martin. "Have you had any luck with the job search?" Martin shook his head. "No. Every place I call either has no openings or wants a reference from Kovac. I am blacklisted." She patted his hand. "Then you will have to try something different. What about going directly to businesses? Sometimes they hire people without advertising. Just walk in and ask if they need help." Martin had not thought of that. It seemed desperate, but then again, he was desperate. The next morning, he left Thomas with Pani Kovarova and walked around the neighborhood. He went into shops, restaurants, and small businesses. Everywhere he asked the same question. "Are you hiring? Do you need any help?" The answers were always the same. "No, we are not hiring." "Sorry, we have enough staff. Come back in a few months." Martin walked for hours. His feet hurt. His face was numb from the cold. By early afternoon, he had been rejected by at least 20 places. He sat on a bench in the town square and watched people walk by. They all seemed to have purpose. They all seemed to know where they were going. Martin felt invisible. Just another struggling man in a city full of struggling people. He was about to give up and go home when he noticed a small bakery across the street. The sign in the window said, "Fresh bread daily." Martin had walked past this bakery 100 times, but never thought to go inside. He crossed the street and pushed open the door. The smell of fresh bread hit him immediately. Warm and yeasty and wonderful. Behind the counter stood an older man with a white apron and kind eyes. "Good afternoon," he said. "What can I get for you?" Martin cleared his throat. "I am actually looking for work. Do you need any help here?" The baker studied him for a moment. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Anything. I can clean, I can lift heavy things, I can work long hours. I am a hard worker." The baker wiped his hands on his apron. "What is your name?" "Martin Novotny." "And why do you need work so badly, Mr. Novotny?" Martin hesitated. He could lie. He could make up a story. But something about the baker's kind eyes made him want to tell the truth. "I was fired from my warehouse job on Christmas Eve because I left to be with my sick son in the hospital. Now no one will hire me, because my old supervisor gives me bad references. I have a 5-year-old boy at home and rent due in a week and no money. I am desperate." The baker was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I am Mr. Svoboda. I own this bakery. My assistant quit last week to move to Praha. I need someone to help with deliveries and cleaning. The pay is not great, 80 crowns a day, but you can start tomorrow if you want." Martin felt tears prick his eyes. "Really? You would hire me? Just like that?" Mr. Svoboda smiled. "I believe in second chances, and I believe you when you say you are a hard worker. Be here at 5 in the morning. We start early." Martin shook his hand vigorously. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You will not regret this. I promise." Martin practically ran home. When he burst through the apartment door, Thomas looked up in surprise. "Papa, why are you smiling?" Martin picked him up and spun him around. "Because I got a job, little one. I got a job." Thomas laughed. That is wonderful, Papa. Pani Kovarova came out of the kitchen. You found work? Martin nodded, grinning. A bakery. I start tomorrow. The pay is not much, but it is something. It is enough. She hugged him. I told you something would come through. I am so happy for you, Martin. That night, Martin made a simple dinner of potatoes and the last of the stew. But it tasted like a feast. For the first time in weeks, Martin felt hope. Real hope. He had a job. He could pay rent. He could feed Thomas. They were going to be okay. Martin woke up at 4 the next morning. He dressed quietly in the dark and left the apartment before the sun rose. The streets were empty and silent. He walked the 15 minutes to the bakery and found Mr. Svoboda already there, pulling fresh loaves out of the oven. Good morning, Mr. Svoboda said. Ready to work? Yes, sir. Mr. Svoboda showed him around. The bakery was small but clean. There was a large oven, several work tables covered in flour, and shelves lined with bread and pastries. Your job is simple, Mr. Svoboda explained. Help me load the delivery van in the morning. Drive the bread to our customers around the city. Then come back and clean up the shop. Can you drive? Yes, I have a license. Good. The van is out back. Let me show you the route. They spent the next hour loading boxes of bread into the old delivery van. Mr. Svoboda gave Martin a list of addresses and instructions. Most of the deliveries were to small shops and cafes. A few were to hotels. Martin memorized the route and climbed into the van. The engine coughed but started. Martin pulled out into the early morning darkness and began his deliveries. The work was straightforward. Drive to the address, carry the boxes inside, get a signature, move to the next stop. By 9 in the morning, Martin had completed all the deliveries. He returned to the bakery and helped Mr. Svoboda clean the shop they banked, swept floors, wiped down tables, and washed baking trays. The work was physical, but not difficult. Martin enjoyed it. There was something satisfying about seeing a dirty shop become clean. At noon, Mr. Svoboda handed Martin 80 crowns. You did good work today. Same time tomorrow? Martin nodded. Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for this opportunity. Mr. Svoboda smiled. Everyone deserves a chance, Mr. Novotny. Go home. Rest. I will see you tomorrow. Martin walked home with the money in his pocket. 80 crowns. It was not much, but it was honest work. If he worked 6 days a week, that would be 480 crowns. Not enough to cover rent, but enough to buy food and keep them going while he figured out the rest. When he got home, Thomas ran to greet him. How was your first day, Papa? It was good, little one. Very good. That night, Martin counted his money. With the 80 crowns from today and the final paycheck from Kovac that should arrive any day, he would have enough for rent. Barely. But enough. Martin felt the weight on his chest lighten just a little. Maybe, just maybe, they were going to survive this after all. Martin worked at the bakery for 6 days straight. Every morning he woke at 4, walked through the dark streets, and helped Mr. Svoboda load the delivery van. The work became routine. He learned the route by heart. He learned which customers liked to chat and which ones wanted him to drop the bread and leave. He learned how to stack the boxes so they would not tip over when he turned corners. The work was honest and simple, and Martin found peace in the routine. On the 7th day, Mr. Svoboda told him to take Sunday off. You have worked hard, he said. Spend time with your son. Martin thanked him and went home with his week's wages. 480 crowns. It was not much, but it was something. That same afternoon, Martin's final paycheck from Kovac arrived in the mail. He tore open the envelope with shaking hands. 3,200 crowns. Less than he had hoped, but more than he feared. Martin sat at the kitchen table and counted his money. 3,680 crowns total. Rent was 8,000. He was still short by 4,320 crowns. Martin put his head in his hands. He had worked so hard. He had done everything right, and it still was not enough. The rent was due in 3 days. Mr. Petrick would not accept partial payment. Martin knew that for certain. He needed a miracle. That evening, Pani Kovarova came over with dinner. She had made dumplings and gravy. As they ate, she asked Martin how much money he still needed. Martin told her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "I have been saving this for emergencies," she said. "There is 2,000 crowns here. Take it." Martin's eyes widened. "No, I cannot take your savings. What if you need it?" She pushed the envelope toward him. "I am an old woman. I do not need much. You and Thomas need it more than I do. Please take it." Martin felt tears burn in his eyes. "I will pay you back. I promise. Every crown." She smiled. "I know you will. You are a good man, Martin. Now take it before I change my mind." With Pani Kovarova's money, Martin now had 5,680 crowns. He was still short 2,320. Martin spent Sunday searching the apartment for anything he could sell. He found an old radio that did not work anymore. A few books, some kitchen items Elena had left behind. He took everything to a second-hand shop on Monday morning. The shop owner looked through the items with disinterest. "I can give you 100 crowns for all of it." Martin's heart sank. "That is all?" The man shrugged. "Nobody wants old junk anymore. Take it or leave it." Martin took the 100 crowns. It was better than nothing. He was now 2,220 short. 2 days until rent was due. Martin went to work at the bakery that morning with a heavy heart. He loaded the van and made his deliveries in a fog. His mind spun with calculations. Where could he get 2,000 more crowns? He had no family to borrow from. He had no friends except Pani Kovarova, and she had already given him everything she could. He thought about going to a loan office, but they would never lend money to someone with no steady income history. He thought about asking Mr. Svoboda for an advance on his wages, but that seemed too bold. They had only known each other for a week. When Martin returned to the bakery after his deliveries, Mr. Svoboda noticed something was wrong. "You look troubled today, Mr. Novotny. Is everything all right?" Martin forced a smile. "Just tired. I did not sleep well." Mr. Svoboda did not look convinced, but he did not push. That afternoon, as Martin was sweeping the floor, a well-dressed man entered the bakery. He wore an expensive coat and polished shoes. He looked out of place in the small shop. Mr. Svoboda greeted him warmly. "Mr. Dvornik, good to see you. What brings you here today?" The well-dressed man smiled. "Just picking up my usual order. 2 loaves of rye bread." Mr. Svoboda wrapped the bread and handed it over. The man paid and was about to leave when he noticed Martin. "Excuse me, have we met before? You look familiar." Martin looked up. "I do not think so, sir." The man studied him for a moment longer, then shrugged. I must be mistaken. Good day. He left the shop. Mr. Svoboda turned to Martin. That was Mr. Dvornik. He is a very important man. Works for Novak Industries, one of the biggest companies in the city. Comes here every week for fresh bread. Martin finished his work and went home. The weight of his financial situation pressed down on him. Tomorrow was Tuesday. Rent was due Wednesday. He had run out of options. That night, Martin could not sleep. He lay in bed beside Thomas and stared at the darkness. Maybe he should just accept reality. Maybe he should pack their things and prepare to leave. But where would they go? They had nowhere. No family. No backup plan. Martin thought about homeless shelters, but the idea of Thomas sleeping in a shelter broke his heart. His son deserved better. Deserved so much better than what Martin could provide. Martin felt like the biggest failure in the world. Tuesday morning came too quickly. Martin dragged himself out of bed and went to work. His body moved through the motions automatically. Load the van, make the deliveries, return to the shop, clean. But his mind was somewhere else. He kept thinking about tomorrow, about the moment when Mr. Petrick would knock on his door demanding rent, about the humiliation of admitting he did not have it, about watching his son be evicted onto the street. When Martin finished work that day, Mr. Svoboda handed him his wages. 80 crowns. Martin stared at the money. It seemed meaningless now. Before Martin could leave, Mr. Svoboda stopped him. Mr. Novotny, I want you to know something. You are a good worker, one of the best I have had. Whatever is troubling you, I hope it works out. If you ever need someone to talk to, I am here. Martin nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Martin walked home slowly through the cold evening. The city was alive with people rushing home from work. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone except Martin. He felt detached from the world around him. When he reached his apartment building, he saw Mr. Petrick's car parked outside. Martin's stomach dropped. The landlord was early. Martin climbed the stairs and found Mr. Petrick waiting outside his door. Novotny, we need to talk. Martin unlocked the door and let him inside. Thomas was playing on the floor. The boy looked up at the landlord with wide eyes. Mr. Petrick ignored him. Tomorrow is the 1st. I am here to remind you that rent is due. Full amount. No excuses. Martin swallowed hard. I know. I will have it. Mr. Petrick narrowed his eyes. You better. Because if you do not, I am calling the police to remove you. Do you understand? Martin nodded. I understand. After Mr. Petrick left, Martin sat on the couch and pulled Thomas close. The boy looked up at him. Papa, why was that man so mean? Martin stroked his hair. Some people are just that way, little one. Do not worry about it. But Thomas could sense something was wrong. Are we in trouble, Papa? Martin forced a smile. No, we are fine. Everything is going to be fine. But even as he said the words, he did not believe them. That night, Martin counted his money one more time. 5,780 crowns. He was short 2,220. There was no way to get it by tomorrow. He had failed. Completely and utterly failed. Martin thought about writing a letter to Thomas, something his son could read when he was older. something that explained why his father had let him down. But what would he say? How could he explain that he had tried his best, and it still was not enough? Martin sat at the kitchen table until midnight. He thought about his life, about all the choices he had made, about Elena and her death, about leaving his teaching job for the warehouse, about being fired on Christmas Eve. Every decision had seemed right at the time. Every decision had been made with good intentions. But somehow, they had all led him here, to this moment, to failure. Martin wondered if this was his punishment for something. Maybe he had done something wrong in a past life. Maybe this was karma. Or maybe life was just random and cruel, and there was no deeper meaning to any of it. Martin did not know any more. He was too tired to think, too tired to fight, too tired to hope. He went to bed and lay in the darkness. Thomas slept peacefully beside him. Martin watched his son's face in the dim light from the window. Thomas looked so innocent, so trusting. He believed his father would take care of him. He believed everything would be okay. Martin wished he had that kind of faith. He wished he could believe in happy endings. But life had taught him otherwise. Life had shown him that good people suffer, that hard work does not always pay off, that sometimes, no matter how much you love someone, it is not enough to protect them. Martin closed his eyes and tried to pray one more time. "Please," he whispered into the darkness, "please help us. I do not know what else to do." But the darkness gave no answer. It never did. Wednesday morning arrived like a death sentence. Martin got up and went to work because he did not know what else to do. Maybe if he kept moving, kept working, kept pretending everything was normal, reality would somehow change. He loaded the van and started his deliveries. On his third stop, at a small cafe, Martin's hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped a box of bread. The cafe owner noticed. "Are you all right?" Martin nodded. "Just tired." But the owner did not look convinced. "You should take care of yourself. You look like you are about to collapse." Martin thanked her and left. He sat in the van for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady his breathing. He had 3 more deliveries to make. He had to finish the route. He had to keep going, because if he stopped, if he allowed himself to fall apart, he would never get back up. Martin finished his deliveries and returned to the bakery just before noon. Mr. Svoboda was kneading dough at one of the work tables. He looked up when Martin entered. "Good, you are back. I need you to make 1 more delivery. A special order just came in." He pointed to a large box on the counter. "This goes to Novak Industries headquarters, the main office building downtown. Do you know where that is?" Martin nodded. "Yes, I have passed it many times." Mr. Svoboda wiped flour from his hands. "Good. They need it delivered to the executive floor. 10th floor. Ask for Mr. Havel's office. He is the chief executive officer." Martin felt a strange flutter in his chest. "The chief executive officer?" Mr. Svoboda smiled. "Yes. Very important man. But do not be nervous. Just deliver the bread and come back." Martin loaded the box into the van and drove across the city. Novak Industries was housed in the tallest building in Brno, glass and steel reaching toward the grey sky. Martin had walked past it countless times, but never imagined he would go inside. He parked the van and carried the box through the front entrance. The lobby was enormous, all marble floors and high ceilings. Well-dressed people moved through the space with purpose. Martin felt out of place in his simple work clothes and old coat. He approached the reception desk. A young woman looked up. "Can I help you?" Martin cleared his throat. "I have a delivery for Mr. Harvell's office. 10th floor." She checked her computer. "Yes, we were expecting that. Take the elevator to the 10th floor. Someone will meet you there." Martin thanked her and walked to the elevator. His hands were sweating. He did not know why he felt so nervous. It was just a bread delivery. Nothing special. The elevator rose smoothly and opened onto a quiet hallway. Thick carpet, expensive artwork on the walls. A middle-aged woman in a business suit stood waiting. "You must be from the bakery. Follow me." Martin followed her down the hall to a large wooden door. She knocked once and opened it. "Mr. Havel, your lunch is here." Martin stepped inside and froze. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Behind a huge desk sat a man in his early 60s with grey hair and sharp eyes. But that was not what made Martin freeze. The man sitting across from the desk, in a leather chair, was the well-dressed customer from the bakery. "Mr. Dvornik." He looked up at Martin and smiled. "Ah, the delivery man from yesterday. I knew you looked familiar." Mr. Harvell stood up. "Thank you for bringing this. Just set it on the side table." Martin placed the box where directed. His mind was spinning. What was happening? Why was Mr. Dvornik here? Mr. Harvell walked over to inspect the bread. "Mr. Svoboda Dobor never disappoints. His bread is the best in the city." He turned to Martin. "What is your name?" "Martin Novotny, sir." "And how long have you worked for the bakery?" "Just over a week, sir." Mr. Harvell studied him with those sharp eyes. "Interesting. You seem nervous. Is everything all right?" Martin swallowed. "Yes, sir. I am fine." But Mr. Dvornik leaned forward. "Actually, I do not think he is fine. I saw this man yesterday at the bakery. He looked troubled then, too." Mr. Harvell raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" Martin felt trapped. These were important men. Powerful men. He did not belong here. "I should go," he said quickly. "I have to return the van." But Mr. Harvell held up a hand. "Wait. Mr. Dvornik here is my head of human resources. He has a talent for reading people. If he says, 'You are troubled,' then you probably are. Is there something we can help you with?" Martin shook his head. "No, sir. It is nothing. Just personal matters." Mr. Dvornik stood and walked closer. "Personal matters that involve money, perhaps. You have the look of a man carrying a heavy financial burden." Martin felt his face flush. "With respect, sir, my problems are my own. I do not want charity." Mr. Harvell smiled slightly. "I respect that. But humor me for a moment. Tell me, what did you do before working at the bakery?" Martin hesitated. He wanted to leave. Wanted to escape this uncomfortable situation, but something in Mr. Harvell's eyes made him answer. "I worked at a warehouse, Kovac Industrial Supply, for 8 years." "And why did you leave?" "I was fired on Christmas Eve." Mr. Harvell's expression changed. "Christmas Eve? That seems harsh. What did you do?" Martin took a deep breath. "My son was in the hospital with pneumonia. I received an emergency telegram during my shift. I left to be with him. My supervisor fired me for abandoning my post. The room fell silent. Mr. Dvornik and Mr. Havel exchanged a glance. Mr. Havel sat back down at his desk. "What is your son's name?" "Thomas. He is 5 years old. And is he all right now?" "Yes, sir. He is recovering. But without my job, I cannot pay rent. We are being evicted today. I tried to find new work, but my old supervisor gives bad references. The bakery was the only place that would hire me." Mr. Havel was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. "Get me personnel files for Kovac Industrial Supply. We own that company, correct?" He listened to whoever answered. "Yes, I thought so. Pull the file for Martin Novotny, former employee. Terminated on December the 24th. I want the full report." He hung up and looked at Martin. "Sit down, Mr. Novotny." Martin sat in the chair Mr. Dvornik had vacated. His legs felt weak. Mr. Havel opened his computer and started typing. "You said your supervisor's name was what?" "Dvorak." Mr. Havel nodded. "I know Dvorak. He was promoted to supervisor about 6 months ago. There have been complaints about his management style. Several, actually. But nothing concrete enough to act on. Until now." Within minutes, Mr. Havel's assistant brought in a folder. Mr. Havel opened it and read through the pages. His expression grew darker with each page he turned. "According to this file, you were a model employee for 8 years. Never late, never absent, excellent performance reviews. Then suddenly, on December 24th, you are terminated for cause, abandoning your post. No warnings, no documentation of prior issues, just immediate termination." He looked up at Martin. "And this happened because you went to be with your sick child?" "Yes, sir. That is the truth." Mr. Havel closed the folder. "Mr. Dvornik, what is our company policy on family emergencies?" Mr. Dvornik answered immediately. "Any employee who receives notification of a family medical emergency has the right to leave work immediately. Their position is protected. Termination in such circumstances is strictly prohibited." Mr. Havel nodded slowly. "So Dvorak violated company policy. He fired a good employee illegally. Then he proceeded to give bad references to sabotage that employee's future prospects." He looked at Martin with something that might have been respect. "You have been through a nightmare, Mr. Novotny, and it was completely unjust." Martin did not know what to say. Mr. Havel picked up his phone again. "Get me Dvorak from Kovac Industrial, now." There was a pause. "I do not care if he is busy. Get him on the line." Another pause. "Dvorak, this is Robert Havel, Chief Executive Officer of Novak Industries." "Yes, your ultimate boss. I am calling about Martin Novotny, the employee you fired on Christmas Eve." The line must have erupted because Mr. Havel held the phone away from his ear for a moment. When he brought it back, his voice was ice cold. "I do not want to hear excuses. You violated company policy. You terminated a good employee for taking care of his sick child. You then sabotaged his future employment. You are fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out within the hour. Do not bother cleaning out your desk. We will mail you your things." He hung up and turned to Martin. "Mr. Novotny, I owe you an apology. My company failed you. We failed to protect you from an abusive supervisor. We failed to ensure our policies were followed. For that, I am truly sorry." Martin sat in stunned silence. Mr. Havel continued. I would like to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement with back pay for all the time you lost. You will report directly to a new supervisor who actually understands what leadership means. Martin found his voice. Sir, I do not know what to say. Say yes. Martin felt tears building in his eyes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Mr. Havel smiled. Good. Mr. Dvornik will handle all the paperwork. You will receive a check for your back pay by the end of the week. That should cover your rent and then some. Martin wiped his eyes. I cannot believe this is happening. This morning I thought I had lost everything. Mr. Dvornik spoke up. If I may, sir, I think we should do more than just reinstate him. Mr. Havel raised an eyebrow. What do you suggest? Well, Mr. Novotny was clearly a valuable employee. 8 years of perfect service. Perhaps we should consider promoting him. Give him a supervisor position himself, someone who understands what it means to care for people. Mr. Havel thought about this. That is an excellent idea. Mr. Novotny, how would you feel about becoming a supervisor at Kovac? The pay is significantly better, and you would be in a position to ensure no other employee is treated the way you were. Martin could barely breathe. A promotion? Me? I am just a warehouse worker. Mr. Havel shook his head. You are more than that. You are a man who chose his son over his job. That shows character. That shows the kind of values we need in leadership. So what do you say? Martin thought about Thomas, about the apartment, about the future that had seemed so hopeless just an hour ago. He thought about Elena and the promise he had made to take care of their son. Yes, he said firmly. I accept. Mr. Havel stood and extended his hand. Welcome back to Kovac Industrial, Supervisor Novotny. Martin shook his hand, still unable to fully process what had just happened. Mr. Dvornik clapped him on the shoulder. Go home to your son. Tell him the good news. Report to work on Monday morning. We will have everything ready for you. Martin nodded. He felt like he was in a dream. A wonderful, impossible dream. He left the office and rode the elevator back down to the lobby. When he stepped outside into the cold air, he looked up at the tall building and laughed. He actually laughed. For the first time in weeks, Martin felt light, felt hope, felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay after all. He drove the van back to the bakery. Mr. Svoboda was pulling fresh loaves from the oven. How did the delivery go? Martin set down the empty box. It went well. Actually, it went better than well. I have something to tell you. He explained everything that had happened. Mr. Svoboda listened with wide eyes. When Martin finished, the baker broke into a huge smile. That is wonderful news. I am so happy for you. But wait, does this mean you are leaving the bakery? Martin nodded apologetically. I am sorry. I know I only just started. But this job pays much better. I can finally take care of my son properly. Mr. Svoboda waved his hand. Do not apologize. This is exactly what you needed. I am just glad I could help you when you needed it most. You will always be welcome here, Martin Novotny. Always. They shook hands, and Martin left the bakery, feeling like the luckiest man alive. Martin finished his deliveries and returned to the bakery just before noon. Mr. Svoboda was kneading dough at one of the work tables. He looked up when Martin entered. "Good, you are back. I need you to make one more delivery. A special order just came in." He pointed to a large box on the counter. "This goes to Novak Industries headquarters, the main office building downtown. Do you know where that is?" Martin nodded. "Yes, I have passed it many times." Mr. Svoboda wiped flour from his hands. "Good. They need it delivered to the executive floor. 10th floor. Ask for Mr. Havel's office. He is the chief executive officer." Martin felt a strange flutter in his chest. "The chief executive officer?" Mr. Svoboda smiled. "Yes. Very important man. But do not be nervous. Just deliver the bread and come back." Martin loaded the box into the van and drove across the city. Novak Industries was housed in the tallest building in Brno, glass and steel reaching toward the grey sky. Martin had walked past it countless times, but never imagined he would go inside. He parked the van and carried the box through the front entrance. The lobby was enormous, all marble floors and high ceilings. Well-dressed people moved through the space with purpose. Martin felt out of place in his simple work clothes and old coat. He approached the reception desk. A young woman looked up. "Can I help you?" Martin cleared his throat. "I have a delivery for Mr. Havel's office. 10th floor." She checked her computer. "Yes, we were expecting that. Take the elevator to the 10th floor. Someone will meet you there." Martin thanked her and walked to the elevator. His hands were sweating. He did not know why he felt so nervous. It was just a bread delivery. Nothing special. The elevator rose smoothly and opened onto a quiet hallway. Thick carpet, expensive artwork on the walls. A middle-aged woman in a business suit stood waiting. "You must be from the bakery. Follow me." Martin followed her down the hall to a large wooden door. She knocked once and opened it. "Mr. Havel, your lunch is here." Martin stepped inside and froze. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Behind a huge desk sat a man in his early 60s with grey hair and sharp eyes. But that was not what made Martin freeze. The man sitting across from the desk, in a leather chair, was the well-dressed customer from the bakery. Mr. Dvornik. He looked up at Martin and smiled. "Ah, the delivery man from yesterday. I knew you looked familiar." Mr. Havel stood up. "Thank you for bringing this. Just set it on the side table." Martin placed the box where directed. His mind was spinning. What was happening? Why was Mr. Dvornik here? Mr. Havel walked over to inspect the bread. "Mr. Svoboda never disappoints. His bread is the best in the city." He turned to Martin. "What is your name?" "Martin Novotny, sir. And how long have you worked for the bakery?" "Just over a week, sir." Mr. Havel studied him with those sharp eyes. "Interesting. You seem nervous. Is everything all right?" Martin swallowed. "Yes, sir. I am fine." But Mr. Dvornik leaned forward. "Actually, I do not think he is fine. I saw this man yesterday at the bakery. He looked troubled then, too." Mr. Havel raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" Martin felt trapped. These were important men. Powerful men. He did not belong here. "I should go," he said quickly. "I have to return the van." But Mr. Havel held up a hand. "Wait." Mr. Dvornik here is my head of human resources. He has a talent for reading people. If he says you are troubled, then you probably are. Is there something we can help you with? Martin shook his head. No, sir. It is nothing. Just personal matters. Mr. Dvornik stood and walked closer. Personal matters that involve money, perhaps. You have the look of a man carrying a heavy financial burden. Martin felt his face flush. With respect, sir, my problems are my own. I do not want charity. Mr. Havel smiled slightly. I respect that. But humor me for a moment. Tell me, what did you do before working at the bakery? Martin hesitated. He wanted to leave, wanted to escape this uncomfortable situation. But something in Mr. Havel's eyes made him answer. I worked at a warehouse, Kovac Industrial Supply, for 8 years. And why did you leave? I was fired. On Christmas Eve. Mr. Havel's expression changed. Christmas Eve? That seems harsh. What did you do? Martin took a deep breath. My son was in the hospital with pneumonia. I received an emergency telegram during my shift. I left to be with him. My supervisor fired me for abandoning my post. The room fell silent. Mr. Dvornik and Mr. Havel exchanged a glance. Mr. Havel sat back down at his desk. What is your son's name? Thomas. He is 5 years old. And is he all right now? Yes, sir. He is recovering. But without my job, I cannot pay rent. We are being evicted today. I tried to find new work, but my old supervisor gives bad references. The bakery was the only place that would hire me. Mr. Havel was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. Get me personnel files for Kovac Industrial Supply. We own that company, correct? He listened to whoever answered. Yes, I thought so. Pull the file for Martin Novotny, former employee, terminated on December the 24th. I want the full report. He hung up and looked at Martin. Sit down, Mr. Novotny. Martin sat in the chair Mr. Dvornik had vacated. His legs felt weak. Mr. Havel opened his computer and started typing. You said your supervisor's name was what? Dvorak. Mr. Havel nodded. I know Dvorak. He was promoted to supervisor about 6 months ago. There have been complaints about his management style. Several, actually. But nothing concrete enough to act on. Until now. Within minutes, Mr. Havel's assistant brought in a folder. Mr. Havel opened it and read through the pages. His expression grew darker with each page he turned. According to this file, you were a model employee for 8 years, never late, never absent, excellent performance reviews. Then suddenly, on December 24th, you are terminated for cause, abandoning your post, no warnings, no documentation of prior issues, just immediate termination. He looked up at Martin. And this happened because you went to be with your sick child? Yes, sir. That is the truth. Mr. Havel closed the folder. Mr. Dvornik, what is our company policy on family emergencies? Mr. Dvornik answered immediately. Any employee who receives notification of a family medical emergency has the right to leave work immediately. Their position is protected. Termination in such circumstances is strictly prohibited. Mr. Havel nodded slowly. So Dvorak violated company policy. He fired a good employee illegally. Then he proceeded to give bad references to sabotage that employee's future prospects. He looked at Martin with something that might have been respect. "You have been through a nightmare, Mr. Novotny, and it was completely unjust." Martin did not know what to say. Mr. Havel picked up his phone again. "Get me Dvorak from Kovac Industrial. Now." There was a pause. "I do not care if he is busy. Get him on the line." Another pause. "Dvorak? This is Robert Havel, Chief Executive Officer of Novak Industries." "Yes, your ultimate boss. I am calling about Martin Novotny, the employee you fired on Christmas Eve." The line must have erupted because Mr. Havel held the phone away from his ear for a moment. When he brought it back, his voice was ice cold. "I do not want to hear excuses. You violated company policy. You terminated a good employee for taking care of his sick child. You then sabotaged his future employment. You are fault, effective immediately. Security will escort you out within the hour. Do not bother cleaning out your desk. We will mail you your things." He hung up and turned to Martin. "Mr. Novotny, I owe you an apology. My company failed you. We failed to protect you from an abusive supervisor. We failed to ensure our policies were followed. For that, I am truly sorry." Martin sat in stunned silence. Mr. Havel continued. "I would like to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement with back pay for all the time you lost. You will report directly to a new supervisor who actually understands what leadership means." Martin found his voice. "Sir, I do not know what to say." "Say yes." Martin felt tears building in his eyes. "Yes. Thank you. Yes." Mr. Havel smiled. "Good. Mr. Dvornik will handle all the paperwork. You will receive a check for your back pay by the end of the week. That should cover your rent and then some." Martin wiped his eyes. "I cannot believe this is happening. This morning I thought I had lost everything." Mr. Dvornik spoke up. "If I may, sir, I think we should do more than just reinstate him." Mr. Havel raised an eyebrow. "What do you suggest?" "Well, Mr. Novotny was clearly a valuable employee. 8 years of perfect service. Perhaps we should consider promoting him. Give him a supervisor position himself. Someone who understands what it means to care for people." Mr. Havel thought about this. "That is an excellent idea. Mr. Novotny, how would you feel about becoming a supervisor at Kovac? The pay is significantly better, and you would be in a position to ensure no other employee is treated the way you were." Martin could barely breathe. "A promotion? Me? I am just a warehouse worker." Mr. Havel shook his head. "You are more than that. You are a man who chose his son over his job. That shows character. That shows the kind of values we need in leadership. So what do you say?" Martin thought about Thomas, about the apartment, about the future that had seemed so hopeless just an hour ago. He thought about Elena and the promise he had made to take care of their son. "Yes," he said firmly, "I accept." Mr. Havel stood and extended his hand. "Welcome back to Kovac Industrial, Supervisor Novotny." Martin shook his hand, still unable to fully process what had just happened. Mr. Dvornik clapped him on the shoulder. "Go home to your son. Tell him the good news. Report to work on Monday morning. We will have everything ready for you." Martin nodded. He felt like he was in a dream. A wonderful, impossible dream. He left the office and rode the elevator back down to the lobby. When he stepped outside into the cold air, he looked up at the tall building and laughed. He actually laughed. For the first time in weeks, Martin felt light, felt hope, felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay after all. He drove the van back to the bakery. Mr. Svoboda was pulling fresh loaves from the oven. How did the delivery go? Martin set down the empty box. It went well. Actually, it went better than well. I have something to tell you. He explained everything that had happened. Mr. Svoboda listened with wide eyes. When Martin finished, the baker broke into a huge smile. That is wonderful news. I am so happy for you. But wait, does this mean you are leaving the bakery? Martin nodded apologetically. I am sorry. I know I only just started. But this job pays much better. I can finally take care of my son properly. Mr. Svoboda waved his hand. Do not apologize. This is exactly what you needed. I am just glad I could help you when you needed it most. You will always be welcome here, Martin Novotny. Always. They shook hands, and Martin left the bakery, feeling like the luckiest man alive. Martin finished his deliveries and returned to the bakery just before noon. Mr. Svoboda was kneading dough at one of the work tables. He looked up when Martin entered. Good, you are back. I need you to make one more delivery. A special order just came in. He pointed to a large box on the counter. This goes to Novak Industries headquarters, the main office building downtown. Do you know where that is? Martin nodded. Yes, I have passed it many times. Mr. Svoboda wiped flour from his hands. Good. They need it delivered to the executive floor. 10th floor. Ask for Mr. Havel's office. He is the chief executive officer. Martin felt a strange flutter in his chest. The chief executive officer? Mr. Svoboda smiled. Yes, very important man. But do not be nervous. Just deliver the bread and come back. Martin loaded the box into the van and drove across the city. Novak Industries was housed in the tallest building in Brno, glass and steel reaching toward the grey sky. Martin had walked past it countless times, but never imagined he would go inside. He parked the van and carried the box through the front entrance. The lobby was enormous, all marble floors and high ceilings. Well-dressed people moved through the space with purpose. Martin felt out of place in his simple work clothes and old coat. He approached the reception desk. A young woman looked up. Can I help you? Martin cleared his throat. I have a delivery for Mr. Havel's office, 10th floor. She checked her computer. Yes, we were expecting that. Take the elevator to the 10th floor. Someone will meet you there. Martin thanked her and walked to the elevator. His hands were sweating. He did not know why he felt so nervous. It was just a bread delivery. Nothing special. The elevator rose smoothly and opened onto a quiet hallway. Thick carpet, expensive artwork on the walls. A middle-aged woman in a business suit stood waiting. You must be from the bakery. Follow me. Martin followed her down the hall to a large wooden door. She knocked once and opened it. Mr. Havel, your lunch is here. Martin stepped inside and froze. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Behind a huge desk sat a man in his early 60s with grey hair and sharp eyes. But that was not what made Martin freeze. The man sitting across from the desk, in a leather chair, was the well-dressed customer from the bakery. Mr. Dvornik. He looked up at Martin and smiled. Ah, the delivery man from yesterday. I knew you looked familiar. Mr. Harvell stood up. Thank you for bringing this. Just set it on the side table. Martin placed the box where directed. His mind was spinning. What was happening? Why was Mr. Dvornik here? Mr. Harvell walked over to inspect the bread. Mr. Svoboda. If it disappoints, his bread is the best in the city. He turned to Martin. What is your name? Martin Novotny, sir. And how long have you worked for the bakery? Just over a week, sir. Mr. Harvell studied him with those sharp eyes. Interesting. You seem nervous. Is everything all right? Martin swallowed. Yes, sir. I am fine. But Mr. Dvornik leaned forward. Actually, I do not think he is fine. I saw this man yesterday at the bakery. He looked troubled then, too. Mr. Harvell raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Martin felt trapped. These were important men, powerful men. He did not belong here. I should go, he said quickly. I have to return the van. But Mr. Harvell held up a hand. Wait. Mr. Dvornik here is my head of human resources. He has a talent for reading people. If he says you are troubled, then you probably are. Is there something we can help you with? Martin shook his head. No, sir. It is nothing, just personal matters. Mr. Dvornik stood and walked closer. Personal matters that involve money, perhaps. You have the look of a man carrying a heavy financial burden. Martin felt his face flush. With respect, sir, my problems are my own. I do not want charity. Mr. Harvell smiled slightly. I respect that. But humor me for a moment. Tell me, what did you do before working at the bakery? Martin hesitated. He wanted to leave, wanted to escape this uncomfortable situation. But something in Mr. Harvell's eyes made him answer. I worked at a warehouse, Kovac Industrial Supply, for 8 years. And why did you leave? I was fired on Christmas Eve. Mr. Harvell's expression changed. Christmas Eve? That seems harsh. What did you do? Martin took a deep breath. My son was in the hospital with pneumonia. I received an emergency telegram during my shift. I left to be with him. My supervisor fired me for abandoning my post. The room fell silent. Mr. Dvornik and Mr. Harvell exchanged a glance. Mr. Harvell sat back down at his desk. What is your son's name? Thomas. He is 5 years old. And is he all right now? Yes, sir. He is recovering. But without my job, I cannot pay rent. We are being evicted today. I tried to find new work, but my old supervisor gives bad references. The bakery was the only place that would hire me. Mr. Harvell was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. Get me personnel files for Kovac Industrial Supply. We own that company, correct? He listened to whoever answered. Yes, I thought so. Pull the file for Martin Novotny, former employee, terminated on December 24th. I want the full report. He hung up and looked at Martin. Sit down, Mr. Novotny. Martin sat in the chair Mr. Dvornik had vacated. His legs felt weak. Mr. Harvell opened his computer and started typing. You said your supervisor's name was what? Dvorak. Mr. Harvell nodded. I know Dvorak. He was promoted to supervisor about 6 months ago. There have been complaints about his management style. Several, actually. but nothing concrete enough to act on. Until now. Within minutes, Mr. Harvell's assistant brought in a folder. Mr. Harvell opened it and read through the pages. His expression grew darker with each page he turned. According to this file, you were a model employee for 8 years. Never late, never absent. Excellent performance reviews. Then suddenly, on December the 24th, you are terminated for cause, abandoning your post. No warnings, no documentation of prior issues. Just immediate termination. He looked up at Martin. And this happened because you went to be with your sick child? Yes, sir. That is the truth. Mr. Harvell closed the folder. Mr. Dvornik, what is our company policy on family emergencies? Mr. Dvornik answered immediately. Any employee who receives notification of a family medical emergency has the right to leave work immediately. Their position is protected. Termination in such circumstances is strictly prohibited. Mr. Harvell nodded slowly. So Dvorak violated company policy. He fired a good employee illegally. Then he proceeded to give bad references to sabotage that employee's future prospects. He looked at Martin with something that might have been respect. You have been through a nightmare, Mr. Novotny. And it was completely unjust. Martin did not know what to say. Mr. Harvell picked up his phone again. Get me Dvorak from Kovac Industrial, now. There was a pause. I do not care if he is busy. Get him on the line. Another pause. Dvorak? This is Robert Havel, Chief Executive Officer of Novak Industries. Yes, your ultimate boss. I am calling about Martin Novotny, the employee you fired on Christmas Eve. The line must have erupted, because Mr. Havel held the phone away from his ear for a moment. When he brought it back, his voice was ice. Cold. I do not want to hear excuses. You violated company policy. You terminated a good employee for taking care of his sick child. You then sabotaged his future employment. You are fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out within the hour. Do not bother cleaning out your desk. We will mail you your things. He hung up and turned to Martin. Mr. Novotny, I owe you an apology. My company failed you. We failed to protect you from an abusive supervisor. We failed to ensure our policies were followed. For that, I am truly sorry. Martin sat in stunned silence. Mr. Harvell continued. I would like to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement with back pay for all the time you lost. You will report directly to a new supervisor who actually understands what leadership means. Martin found his voice. Sir, I do not know what to say. Say yes. Martin felt tears building in his eyes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Mr. Harvell smiled. Good. Mr. Dvornik will handle all the paperwork. You will receive a check for your back pay by the end of the week. That should cover your rent and then some. Martin wiped his eyes. I cannot believe this is happening. This morning I thought I had lost everything. Mr. Dvornik spoke up. If I may, sir, I think we should do more than just reinstate him. Mr. Harvell raised an eyebrow. What do you suggest? Well, Mr. Novotny was clearly a valuable employee. 8 years of perfect service. Perhaps we should consider promoting him. Give him a supervisor position himself. Someone who understands what it means to care for people. Mr. Harvell thought about this. That is an excellent idea. Mr. Novotny, how would you feel about becoming a supervisor at Kovac? The pay is significantly better. and you would be in a position to ensure no other employee is treated the way you were. Martin could barely breathe. A promotion? Me? I am just a warehouse worker. Mr. Havel shook his head. You are more than that. You are a man who chose his son over his job. That shows character. That shows the kind of values we need in leadership. So what do you say? Martin thought about Thomas, about the apartment, about the future that had seemed so hopeless just an hour ago. He thought about Elena and the promise he had made to take care of their son. Yes, he said firmly. I accept. Mr. Havel stood and extended his hand. Welcome back to Kovac Industrial, Supervisor Novotny. Martin shook his hand, still unable to fully process what had just happened. Mr. Dvornik clapped him on the shoulder. Go home to your son. Tell him the good news. Report to work on Monday morning. We will have everything ready for you. Martin nodded. He felt like he was in a dream. A wonderful, impossible dream. He left the office and rode the elevator back down to the lobby. When he stepped outside into the cold air, he looked up at the tall building and laughed. He actually laughed. For the first time in weeks, Martin felt light, felt hope, felt like maybe, just maybe everything was going to be okay after all. He drove the van back to the bakery. Mr. Svoboda was pulling fresh loaves from the oven. How did the delivery go? Martin set down the empty box. It went well. Actually, it went better than well. I have something to tell you. He explained everything that had happened. Mr. Svoboda listened with wide eyes. When Martin finished, the baker broke into a huge smile. That is wonderful news. I am so happy for you. But wait, does this mean you are leaving the bakery? Martin nodded apologetically. I am sorry. I know I only just started. But this job pays much better. I can finally take care of my son properly. Mr. Svoboda waved his hand. Do not apologize. This is exactly what you needed. I am just glad I could help you when you needed it most. You will always be welcome here, Martin Novotny. Always. They shook hands, and Martin left the bakery feeling like the luckiest man alive. Martin practically ran home from the bakery. His heart pounded with excitement and disbelief. He kept replaying the conversation in Mr. Havel's office over and over in his mind. Had it really happened? Was it real? He reached his apartment building and took the stairs 2 at a time. When he burst through the door, Pani Kovarova looked up in alarm. Martin, what is wrong? Are you all right? Martin was breathing hard, grinning like a madman. Everything is all right. Everything is perfect. I got my job back. I got promoted. We are not being evicted. Pani Kovarova's hand went to her chest. What? How? Martin told her the entire story. She listened with tears streaming down her face. When he finished, she hugged him tightly. I told you something would work out. I told you to have faith. Martin hugged her back. You were right. You were right about everything. Thomas came running from the bedroom. Papa, you are home early. Martin scooped him up and spun him around. Yes, little one. I have the best news. We are going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. Thomas laughed. What happened, Papa? Martin set him down and knelt to his level. Remember how Papa lost his job? Well, today I got it back. And even better, I got a promotion. That means more money. We can pay rent. We can buy food. We can maybe even get you that toy train you wanted. Thomas's eyes went wide. Really? The red one? Martin nodded. Really? We will go to the store this weekend and pick one out together. Thomas threw his arms around Martin's neck. You are the best papa in the whole world. Martin held his son close and felt tears run down his cheeks. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for believing in me. That evening, after Pani Kovarova left, Martin counted his money again. He now had 5,780 crowns. Plus he would receive back pay by the end of the week. Mr. Dvornik had said it would cover all the time he had lost, plus the difference from his promotion. Martin estimated it would be at least 15,000 crowns. Maybe more. For the first time in months, money would not be the constant weight on his shoulders. He could pay rent with plenty left over. He could fill the cupboards with food. He could buy Thomas new clothes, new shoes, maybe even save some money for emergencies. The relief was overwhelming. Martin sat at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. He had been so close to losing everything, so close to the edge. And somehow, impossibly, he had been pulled back. Later that night, Martin received a knock at his door. He opened it to find Mr. Petrick standing there with his usual scowl. I am here for the rent, Novotny. Martin smiled. Yes, of course. Just a moment. He went to the kitchen and counted out 8,000 crowns exactly. He returned and handed the money to Mr. Petrick. The landlord counted it twice, clearly surprised. Where did you get this? I thought you were broke. Martin kept smiling. I got my job back today. Actually, I got promoted. Mr. Petrick grunted. Well, good for you. But rent goes up next month by 500 crowns. Martin's smile faded. What? Why? Mr. Petrick shrugged. Inflation. Everything is getting more expensive. If you do not like it, you can move out. Martin felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. He would not let Mr. Petrick ruin this day. Fine. I will have it next month. Mr. Petrick pocketed the money and left without another word. Martin closed the door and leaned against it. Even good news came with complications, but he could handle a rent increase. With his new salary, it would be manageable. He went to check on Thomas, who had fallen asleep in bed. Martin tucked the blanket around him and kissed his forehead. Sweet dreams, little one. Everything is going to be better now, I promise. Martin lay down beside his son, and for the first time in weeks, fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. No nightmares, no anxiety. Just rest. The next morning, Martin woke up feeling more refreshed than he had in months. He made breakfast for Thomas, a real breakfast with eggs and bread and jam. Thomas ate happily, chattering about what kind of train he wanted. Martin listened and smiled. After breakfast, Pani Kovarova came over. I will watch Thomas today, while you take care of business, she said. Martin thanked her and headed out. His first stop was the bank. He deposited the money he had been keeping at home and set up a small savings account. The banker congratulated him on his promotion. News traveled fast in their neighborhood. Martin's next stop was the grocery store. He walked through the aisles and filled his cart without worrying about the cost. Fresh vegetables, meat, bread, milk, cheese, fruit. Things they had not been able to afford in weeks. At the checkout, the total came to 600 crowns. Martin paid without hesitation. He carried the bags home feeling proud. When Thomas saw all the food, his eyes lit up. "Look at all this, Papa. We are rich." Martin laughed. "We are not rich, little one. But we are comfortable. And that is enough." Over the next few days, Martin prepared for his return to Kovac Industrial. He cleaned and ironed his work clothes. He mentally prepared himself for the responsibility of being a supervisor. He thought about the kind of leader he wanted to be. Someone fair. Someone who listened. Someone who understood that his employees were human beings with families and problems and lives outside of work. He would be nothing like Dvorak. On Friday afternoon, a courier arrived at Martin's apartment with an envelope from Novak Industries. Martin's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a check for 18,500 crowns. Back pay, plus the salary difference for his promotion. Martin stared at the number. It was more money than he had seen in one place in years. He immediately thought of Pani Kovarova. She had lent him 2,000 crowns when he had nothing. It was time to pay her back. Martin went to her apartment and knocked. She opened the door with a warm smile. "Martin, come in." He held out an envelope containing 2,500 crowns, the original 2,000 she had lent him, plus 500 extra as thanks. Pani Kovarova tried to refuse the extra money, but Martin insisted. "You saved us. You believed in us when no one else did. Please take it." She finally accepted, tears in her eyes. "You are a good man, Martin Novotny. Your Eleanor would be so proud of you." Martin felt his throat tighten. "I hope so. I try to live in a way that would make her proud." Pani Kovarova patted his cheek. "You do, every single day." Martin thanked her and returned to his apartment. He sat down and wrote out a budget. With his new salary, he would earn 12,000 crowns per month. Rent was now 8,500. That left 3,500 for everything else. Food, utilities, medicine, clothes, and savings. It was tight, but manageable. More importantly, it was stable. That weekend, Martin took Thomas to the toy store downtown. They walked through the aisles looking at all the different trains. Thomas finally chose a red wooden train with a whistle and 4 cars that connected together. It cost 350 crowns. Martin bought it without hesitation. He also bought some wooden tracks so Thomas could build different routes. At the checkout, Thomas hugged the box to his chest. "Thank you, Papa. This is the best present ever." Martin knelt down. "You deserve it, little one. You have been so patient and so brave through everything. I am proud of you." They went home and spent the afternoon building train tracks across the living room floor. Thomas made the train go around and around, making whistle sounds. Martin watched and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Sunday evening, Martin laid out his clothes for Monday, his first day as supervisor. He felt nervous, but also excited. This was a fresh start, a chance to prove himself, a chance to make a difference. He thought about the other warehouse workers, the ones like Joseph, who had been kind to him. He would make sure they were treated fairly. He would make sure no one was fired for taking care of their family. He would build a team based on respect, not fear. That night, Martin could not sleep. Not from anxiety this time, but from anticipation. He kept thinking about everything that had happened. Less than 2 weeks ago, he had been sitting in a hospital room thinking his life was over. Now he had a good job, a promotion, and hope for the future. How quickly things could change. How quickly darkness could turn to light. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Martin woke before dawn and got dressed carefully. He made breakfast for Thomas and explained that Papa had to go back to the warehouse today. But this time, Papa is the boss. Thomas looked impressed. Does that mean you tell people what to do? Martin smiled. Sort of. But more importantly, it means I help people do their jobs well. I make sure everyone is safe and happy at work. Thomas nodded seriously. That sounds like a good job, Papa. Martin kissed him goodbye and left him with Pani Kovarova. The bus ride to Kovac Industrial felt surreal. Martin had taken this route hundreds of times before. But now everything was different. He was returning not as a defeated man, but as someone with authority, someone with a second chance. When Martin arrived at the warehouse, several workers were gathered near the entrance. Joseph saw him first, and his face broke into a huge smile. Martin, is it true? Are you back? Word had spread. Martin nodded. Yes, I am back. But things are different now. Dvorak is gone. I am the new supervisor. The men erupted in cheers. Joseph clapped him on the back. Thank God. Dvorak made all our lives miserable. You will be a good leader, Martin. I know you will. Martin felt humbled by their faith in him. I will do my best. I promise. A woman in a business suit approached. She was in her 40s with kind eyes. Mr. Novotny, I am Helena Bartasova. I am the new warehouse manager. Mr. Harville sent me to help with your transition. Shall we go to the office? Martin followed her inside. The warehouse looked the same, but felt different. The oppressive atmosphere that Dvorak had created was already lifting. In the office, Helena explained his new responsibilities. You will oversee the day shift crew, about 15 workers. Your job is to make sure shipments are processed efficiently and safely. You will handle scheduling, time-off requests, and performance reviews. But most importantly, you will be the advocate for your team. If they have problems, you solve them. If they need support, you provide it. Martin listened carefully. This is exactly the kind of leader I want to be. Helena smiled. I know. That is why Mr. Harvell chose you. She handed him a folder. Here are the personnel files for your team. Review them. Get to know your people. Understand their strengths and challenges. Then meet with each of them individually this week. Let them know you are here to help, not to punish. Martin took the folder. Thank you. I will not let you down. Helena stood to leave. I know you will not. Welcome back, Supervisor Novotny. After she left, Martin sat in the small office and opened the folder. Inside were files for each worker. Joseph, Pavel, Lucas. Names he knew. People he had worked beside. Now he was responsible for them. It was a heavy responsibility, but Martin felt ready. More than ready. He felt called to do this. This was his chance to make things right, not just for himself, but for everyone who had suffered under Dvorak's cruelty. Martin took a deep breath and walked out onto the warehouse floor. It was time to begin. Martin gathered the day shift crew in the break room at 8 in the morning. 15 workers stood before him, some curious, some skeptical, some hopeful. Martin recognized every face. These were men and women he had worked beside for years. Now he stood in front of them as their supervisor. He cleared his throat. Good morning, everyone. As you probably heard, I am your new supervisor. Dvorak is gone. He was fired for violating company policy. There were murmurs of approval. Martin continued. I want you all to know something important. I am not here to make your lives difficult. I am here to help you do your jobs well and to make sure you are treated fairly. If you have a family emergency, you go take care of your family. If you need time off, you ask, and we will figure it out together. If you have problems at work, you come talk to me. I will listen. I will help. Because we are a team, and teams take care of each other. Joseph raised his hand. What about quotas? Dvorak was always pushing us to work faster, lift more, meet impossible deadlines. Martin nodded. Quotas will be reasonable. We will work efficiently, but not at the cost of your safety or health. If management sets unrealistic expectations, I will push back. Your well-being matters more than numbers on a spreadsheet. Several workers smiled. A younger man named David spoke up. What about overtime? Will we be forced to stay late like before? Martin shook his head. Overtime will always be voluntary. If you want the extra hours, great. If you need to go home to your family, that is fine too. I will never force anyone to choose between their job and their loved ones. The room relaxed. Martin could feel the tension draining away. These people had lived under Dvorak's thumb for months. They needed to know things would be different now. Martin spent the rest of the morning walking the warehouse floor. He checked inventory systems, inspected equipment, and talked with workers individually. He asked about their families, their concerns, their ideas for improving the workplace. People opened up to him in ways they never had before. Pavel mentioned that the forklift had been making strange noises for weeks, but Dvorak had ignored his complaints. Martin immediately called maintenance. Lucas said the break room heater had not worked all winter. Martin added it to his list of things to fix. A woman named Marie said she had been asking for better lighting in the storage area because she could barely see the labels on boxes. Martin promised to get new lights installed by the end of the week. These were small things, simple things, but they mattered. They showed people that someone cared. At noon, Helena came to check on him. How is your first morning going? Martin smiled. Good. Really good. I'm learning a lot about what needs to be fixed around here. Helena nodded approvingly. That is exactly what a good supervisor does. Listen first, then act. You have good instincts, Martin. Keep trusting them. After lunch, Martin held one-on-one meetings with each crew member. He sat down with Joseph first. The older man looked emotional. I never thought I would see the day when this place felt human again. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for coming back and making things right. Martin felt humbled. I am just trying to be the kind of supervisor I would have wanted when I was loading boxes. Joseph smiled. That is what makes you perfect for this job. You understand what it is like to be on the other side. You have walked in our shoes. The meetings continued throughout the afternoon. Each worker had stories of how Dvorak had mistreated them, denied time off for sick children, threatened them over minor mistakes, created an atmosphere of fear and resentment. Martin listened to every story and made notes. He wanted to understand exactly what had gone wrong so he could make sure it never happened again. By the end of the day, Martin felt exhausted, but fulfilled. This was what leadership should be. Not about wielding power over people, but about lifting them up. Not about fear, but about trust. Not about numbers, but about human beings. Martin locked up the office at 5 and headed home. On the bus, he reflected on the day. It had gone better than he could have hoped. The crew trusted him. They believed in him. Now he just had to prove he deserved that trust. When Martin arrived home, Thomas ran to greet him. "Papa, how was your first day as the boss?" Martin laughed and picked him up. "It was wonderful, little one. I helped a lot of people today." Thomas looked impressed. "Did you tell them what to do?" Martin shook his head. "Not really. Mostly I listened to what they needed and then tried to help them. That is what good bosses do. They serve the people who work for them." Thomas thought about this. "That sounds hard." Martin nodded. "It is. But it is also the most important work I have ever done." They spent the evening playing with the toy train. Martin built elaborate track layouts, while Thomas pushed the train around, making sound effects. Pani Kovarova came over with dinner, a pot of goulash she had made. They ate together at the small kitchen table, talking and laughing. Martin looked around at this simple scene and felt grateful. This was enough. This was everything. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. Martin threw himself into his new role with dedication. Every morning he arrived early to prepare for the day. He checked equipment, reviewed schedules, and made sure everything was ready before his crew arrived. He started implementing changes, small improvements that made big differences. New lighting in the storage area, repairs to the forklift, a working heater in the break room. He also created a system where workers could submit suggestions anonymously. Within the first week, he received dozens of ideas. Better organization of inventory, more efficient loading procedures, safety improvements. Martin reviewed every suggestion and implemented the ones that made sense. The warehouse started running more smoothly than it had in years. Word of Martin's leadership style spread throughout Novak Industries. Helena told him that other departments were asking about his methods. Mr. Havel himself called Martin into his office at the end of the second week. "Sit down, Mr. Novotny. I have been hearing excellent things about your work." Martin sat nervously. "Thank you, sir. I am just trying to do my best." Mr. Havel smiled. "You are doing more than your best. Productivity at Kovac is up 20%. Worker satisfaction scores have doubled. Sick days are down. And I have not received a single complaint from your crew. That is remarkable." Martin felt proud but remained humble. "I have a good team, sir. They just needed someone to listen to them and treat them with respect." Mr. Havel nodded. "That is the mark of true leadership. Understanding that your people are your greatest asset." Mr. Havel leaned back in his chair. "I want to talk to you about something. We have other warehouses, 5 facilities across the country. They all have the same problems Kovac had. Poor management, low morale, high turnover. I want you to help fix them." Martin blinked. "Me, sir." "How?" Mr. Havel explained his vision. "I want you to train other supervisors, teach them your approach. Show them how to build teams instead of breaking them down. It would mean traveling occasionally, visiting other facilities, running workshops." Martin thought about Thomas. "I have a young son, sir. I cannot be away from home too much." Mr. Havel nodded. "I understand. We would limit travel to 1 or 2 days per month, and we would compensate you well for the additional responsibility." Martin considered this. If he could help other workers avoid what he went through, that would be meaningful work. All right, sir. I will do it. Over the next month, Martin travelled to 2 other warehouses. The first was in Praha, a 3-hour drive from Brno. The facility was larger than Kovac, but had similar problems. The supervisor there was a man named Novak, who ran the place like a military camp. Workers were afraid to speak up. Mistakes were punished harshly. The atmosphere was toxic. Martin spent 2 days observing and talking with workers. Then he sat down with Novak. "Your people are terrified of you. That is not leadership. That is tyranny." Novak bristled. "I get results." Martin shook his head. "You get compliance through fear, but you could get so much more through respect. Let me show you a different way." Over the course of several visits, Martin coached Novak on changing his approach. It was slow progress, but eventually the supervisor began to understand. When Martin visited for the 4th time, he noticed workers were smiling. The tension had lifted. Novak pulled him aside. "You were right. I was doing everything wrong. Thank you for not giving up on me." The second facility was in Ostrava. The supervisor there was a young woman named Petra, who wanted to do well but did not know how. She had been promoted too quickly without proper training. Martin spent time mentoring her. He taught her how to delegate, how to communicate clearly, how to balance firmness with compassion. Petra soaked up every lesson like a sponge. Within weeks, her warehouse was transformed. She called Martin one evening. "I just want to thank you. You gave me the tools I needed to succeed, not just as a supervisor, but as a leader." Martin felt a deep satisfaction. This was his purpose, not just fixing his own warehouse, but spreading a culture of respect throughout the company. He was making a difference on a scale he never imagined possible. Back in Brno, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Thomas started school and loved it. He made friends and brought home drawings and stories every day. Martin attended parent-teacher meetings and helped with homework. He felt present in his son's life in a way he had not been able to when he was working at the warehouse under Dvorak. Money was no longer a constant source of stress. Martin had saved enough to build a small emergency fund. They moved to a better apartment in a nicer part of the city. The new place had 2 bedrooms, so Thomas finally had his own room. It had heat that actually worked, and windows that did not leak cold air. Mr. Petrick was no longer their landlord. The new landlord was kind and responsive. Life felt stable. Secure. Good. One evening in early spring, Martin received a letter in the mail. It was from Mr. Havel. Inside was an invitation to a company awards ceremony. Martin was being honored as Supervisor of the Year. The ceremony would be held at a fancy hotel downtown. Martin could bring a guest. He immediately thought of Pani Kovarova. She had been there for him during his darkest days. She deserved to share in this moment of triumph. When he asked her to attend, she cried with joy. "Of course I will come. I am so proud of you, Martin." The night of the ceremony arrived. Martin wore his best suit, the one he had bought for Elena's funeral years ago. Pani Kovarova wore a beautiful dress. They arrived at the hotel and walked into a grand ballroom filled with people. Mr. Havel stood at the podium addressing the crowd of executives and employees. "Tonight, we honor someone who exemplifies everything our company stands for, not because he has worked here the longest or because he has the highest sales numbers, but because he understands what truly matters. He understands that our greatest asset is not our equipment or our inventory, but the people who show up every day to do the work." Martin Novotny joined our company 8 years ago as a warehouse worker. He showed up on time, worked hard, and never complained. When his wife passed away, he continued to show up because he had a son to support. When his son got sick, he made the choice every parent should be able to make without fear. He chose his child. For that choice, he was wrongly terminated by a supervisor who did not understand what leadership means. The ballroom was silent. Every person listened intently. Mr. Havel continued. When I learned what had happened to Mr. Novotny, I was ashamed. Ashamed that my company had failed him. Ashamed that our policies had not protected him. So I offered him his job back with a promotion. But what he has done since then has exceeded every expectation. In 3 months as supervisor, Mr. Novotny transformed Kovac Industrial from our worst performing facility to our best. Productivity is up. Safety incidents are down. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. And he did not stop there. He has traveled to other facilities and shared his approach with other supervisors. He has created a culture of respect and dignity that is spreading throughout our entire organization. Mr. Havel paused. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present the Supervisor of the Year award to Martin Novotny. The ballroom erupted in applause. Martin stood on shaking legs and walked to the podium. Mr. Havel handed him a crystal trophy and shook his hand firmly. Martin looked out at the crowd. He saw Helena smiling. He saw Josef and several other workers from his crew who had been invited. He saw Pani Kovarova wiping tears from her eyes. Martin cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Havel. Thank you all. I do not feel like I deserve this award. I am just a man who tried to do the right thing. When I was fired on Christmas Eve, I thought my life was over. I thought I had failed my son. I thought I had lost everything. But what I learned during that dark time is that sometimes we have to lose everything to understand what truly matters. It is not money or status or success. It is love. It is family. It is treating other people with kindness and respect. Martin's voice grew stronger. When I became a supervisor, I remembered what it felt like to be powerless, to be afraid, to worry that one mistake could cost me everything. I remembered the feeling of being treated like I did not matter. So I made a promise to myself. I would never make anyone feel that way. I would lead with compassion instead of fear. I would listen instead of command. I would serve my team instead of ruling over them. And you know what I discovered? When you treat people with dignity, they rise to meet your expectations. When you show them respect, they give you their best. When you care about them as human beings, they become not just employees, but a family. Martin looked directly at his crew members in the audience. Everything I have achieved is because of the people I work with. They trusted me when they had no reason to. They believed in me when I barely believed in myself. This award belongs to them as much as it belongs to me. The applause was deafening. Martin stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded by well-wishers. Helena hugged him. You gave the perfect speech. Joseph shook his hand. You have changed all our lives, Martin. Never forget that. Later in the evening, Martin sat with Pani Kovarova at their table. She held his hand. Elena would be so proud of you. You kept your promise to her. You gave Thomas a good life. You became the man she always knew you could be. Martin felt tears in his eyes. I hope so. I try every day to honor her memory. Pani Kovarova smiled. You do. Every single day. After the ceremony, Martin took a taxi home. Pani Kovarova had stayed at his apartment to watch Thomas. When Martin walked in, his son was asleep in his bed, the toy train clutched in his small hands. Martin sat on the edge of the bed and watched him sleep. This was what mattered. This peaceful, innocent child who trusted his father completely. Everything Martin had been through, all the pain and struggle and fear, it had all been worth it to give Thomas a stable, happy life. The next morning was Saturday. Martin made pancakes for breakfast. Thomas ate them eagerly, asking about the ceremony. "Did you win, Papa?" Martin showed him the crystal trophy. "Yes, little one. Papa won an award for being a good supervisor." Thomas touched the trophy with reverent fingers. "Can I take it to school and show my class?" Martin laughed. "Maybe next week. Right now, let us do something special. Just you and me. What would you like to do today?" Thomas thought for a moment. "Can we go to the park and maybe get ice cream?" Martin nodded. "That sounds perfect." They bundled up and took the bus to the city park. The trees were budding with new spring leaves. Flowers pushed up through the soil. The air smelled fresh and alive. Martin pushed Thomas on the swings. They fed ducks at the pond. They bought ice cream from a vendor and sat on a bench eating it together. Thomas chatted about school and friends and trains. Martin listened and smiled. This was happiness. This simple moment. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just a father and son spending time together on a spring morning. As they walked home, Thomas slipped his small hand into Martin's. "Papa, are we going to be okay now?" Martin looked down at his son. "Yes, little one. We are going to be just fine. Better than fine. We are going to be happy." Thomas nodded, satisfied. "Good. I like being happy." Martin squeezed his hand. "Me too. Me too." That evening, after Thomas went to bed, Martin sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. He thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. The telegram, the hospital, being fired, the desperate job search, meeting Mr. Svoboda, the chance delivery to Novak Industries, meeting Mr. Havel, getting his job back, the promotion. All of it seemed impossible when he looked back, like a story that happened to someone else. But it had happened to him, and it had changed him. He was no longer the man who had stood at that bus stop on a cold December morning, worrying about being late. He was stronger now, more confident, more compassionate. Martin pulled out a piece of paper and began writing. "Dear Eleanor, I wish you could see Thomas now. He is growing so fast. He is smart and kind and curious about everything. He asks about you sometimes. I tell him stories about how wonderful you were, how much you loved him, how proud you would be of the boy he is becoming. I want you to know that I kept my promise. I gave him a good life. It was not easy. There were times I thought I would fail, times I wanted to give up. But I kept going. For him. Always for him. And somehow we made it through. We are happy now. We are safe. We are together. I hope wherever you are, you can see us. I hope you know that I still love you. I always will. But I am learning to live again, to find joy again, to believe in tomorrow again. Thank you for the years we had together. Thank you for giving me Thomas. Thank you for teaching me what love truly means. I will never forget you. until we meet again. Martin. He folded the letter and placed it in a box where he kept Elena's photographs and other mementos. Then he turned off the lights and went to bed. Tomorrow was Sunday. He would take Thomas to visit Elena's grave. They would bring flowers and tell her about the award and the ceremony and everything that had happened. They would sit with her for a while in the quiet cemetery, and then they would go home and live their lives, because that was what Elena would want. Not grief and sadness, but life and love and hope. Martin closed his eyes and fell asleep. No nightmares, no worries. Just peace, just gratitude for second chances, just dreams of all the tomorrows still to come.